Hello, everybody. My name is Dave Jackson, and you're listening to Tales from the Backlog. This is a video games deep dive review podcast where each week I'm joined by a guest to bring a game out of the backlog, play it, and discuss. My guests today are returning guests and friends of the show. First up, one of the co-hosts with me on a Top 3 podcast and a professional chocobo racer, Aaron Engel.
I'm a professional chocobo racer.
That's right. That's why I introduced you as such. Good to have you back. And we're also joined, as you may expect when we do these FF7 episodes, by a guy that I found sleeping in a coffin in the science lab under my house, Ryan Arrington. Welcome back.
Niggas, what's up, baby? I'm so glad to be back.
Yeah, good to have you guys back. We have to get the band back together because today we're talking about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which is an action RPG developed and published by Square Enix for the PS5 in 2024. Tales from the Backlog has had many Final Fantasy episodes on the show. Final Fantasy IV, Final Fantasy VI with Aaron here, 9, 10, 10-2, 16, Stranger of Paradise, The Goat, and notably Final Fantasy VII Remake episode with both Aaron and Ryan here. That was episode 107 of the show. If this is your first time listening to the show, first of all, thank you for stopping by. Here's how spoilers work. Kind of a complicated one for this game. We're going to need to spoil what goes on in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth to talk about the story in this game, as it is a direct sequel. So the spoiler section will be about the spoilers for this game, Rebirth, and then we'll also need to spoil the entire original Final Fantasy VII game. But that'll be in the spoiler section. Don't worry, until then, we won't spoil too many important things up until that point. You can check down in the show notes for when the spoilers begin. So, what is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth? I say this is a 70-hour tease leading up to the remake of one of gaming's most famous moments. What would you guys say as a quick pitch at the top?
I think that's pretty spot on. Being the middle part of a trilogy is never easy. You know, that's just kind of how it is. Not everything is The Empire Strikes Back. So I understand that there is a big... there's a lot of filler in this game to get us from point A, the first game, to point C, the second game. But yeah, Dave's essentially right on this one. It is a hefty transition between those 2 points.
I would just say that shit claps. That's kind of really it. That shit is so goddamn good. It's my take.
All right. Well, we'll dive into that for sure. I played this, of course, on PS5. It's not on PC at the time of recording, so PS5 only. It took me 70 hours to complete. I did not even come close to doing all of the stuff in the game. Still took 70 hours. How long did it take you guys?
God, it had to have been more than 70 hours, right? Like, I went out of my way to do shit in this game that I hated doing. just cause, you know, you can't really grind on this game, but I tried anyways. I had to have put 80 or 90 into this game, like minimum.
Yeah,
I'm sitting at it easy. I think 150. You hear me?
Yeah.
Your boy's
yeah,
about
it makes sense. Did you end up 100%ing this?
I didn't. I started panicking at the end because you guys have been patiently waiting so long. So I was just like, I need to get it done, to be honest. But when I was talking to Bean, and he was like, it's fine. You know, it's kind of meant for more of like that second playthrough anyway. So I did just about everything minus like what I would consider like a second playthrough kind of thing.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's rewind a little bit. And this is something that we talked about on the Final Fantasy VII Remake episode. But for those who didn't listen to that episode, I want to get a little bit of history because, like, the reason why the three of us played Final Fantasy VII Rebirth should be obvious when you hear all of this. But, I mean, the reason is we either love the original Final Fantasy VII, we love Final Fantasy VII Remake, or both. But for people who didn't listen to that episode, let's get a little bit of history with the Final Fantasy series, with FF7, and then this remake series. So, Aaron, I'll kick to you first.
I was a young lad of 10, maybe 11, 5th or 6th grade, and my cousin Clint had a PlayStation. I was not allowed to have a PlayStation, but he had it, and I watched him play Final Fantasy VII, and I fell in love with RPGs. This is my favorite game of all time. This is one of the 2 or 3 sparks that led to Ryan and I's long and illustrious relationship over the past 2+ decades. This is the OG is my favorite game of all time. I'm not going to say it's the best, but it is absolutely my favorite. And the remakes, like I have to play. And I probably said this in the last episode. I wasn't going to play the original, and then COVID happened, and I was like, well, I could die soon, so I should buy a PlayStation and play Final Fantasy VII Remake. And then 5 years had passed between the two, and I hadn't really thought about it, and then I played this game, and now my next goal is to survive 5 more years so I can see how this ends. It's the game to me.
And Ryan.
Yeah, I am low-key actually the same boat. My dad bought a PlayStation literally basically on the year it came out. I was just juiced to the gills. He bought Final Fantasy VII as a starter game because everyone was saying how good it was. Never touched the title, he or I, for probably the first 2-3 years that we owned the system. And then one day my brother came over, and he was playing it. Apparently he got hooked on it from some friends. And I watched him play it once. Thought it looked pretty cool. And I started playing it from his save file and proceeded to get the frame beat off me. So I was like, okay, well, do I like the game? So I started it over and immediately just fell in love with the characters. The music is so good. So obviously when finding out that he was actually going to have the audacity to actually try to reclaim the glory that he did with that first game, I don't have much faith in things like that. But goddamn, my boy's got it. You know what I mean? If you got it, you got it. He does. So yeah, I've loved the first game. It is also my favorite game of all time. It is the game that got me into RPGs, which I think is probably my favorite genre. I think it's wonderful, and I think it helped kind of essentially usher in the era of RPGs, in my opinion. So I think it's wonderful.
Yeah, obviously one of the most important games ever made, especially if you like RPGs. A lot of people owe a debt to Final Fantasy VII for sure. For me personally, and again, I've told the story before, but I didn't play FF7, the original, until about 2013 for the first time. I got into the section after you leave Midgar, so maybe 10 hours in, and I quit playing. And then I played the remake, and then I played the original FF7. So the first time I finished FF7, the first time I played the content that's remade in Rebirth was in 2020. So I'm pretty new to the original FF7. I don't like it a whole lot, but as we talked about on that FF7 Remake episode, I love Remake. I love the first game of this Remake trilogy. And this game, FF7 Rebirth, I don't think it's as good as Remake. I think there's a lot of stuff that's added, and a lot of stuff that they added to this game makes this game worse than FF7 Remake. But I think that a lot of the important things, like the dynamics between characters, the voice acting performances, the music, and the combat are still so good in this game that I end up enjoying the experience of it. Especially since I beat this a couple months ago, and all of the times when I was frustrated because I had to do fucking stealth to catch chocobos, the frustration from that is gone now. And so I'll definitely talk about those things that I don't think are very good, but I do think that this accomplishes the goal of, like Aaron said, bridging that first game in the trilogy to getting to that third, that big climax that's coming in 2031 or whenever the fuck that game's going to come out. But yeah. I do think this game is pretty good. The stuff that it's really good at is really, really good. But there is unfortunately a lot of things that I don't like. I made the comparison, the metaphor that if Final Fantasy VII Remake is a home run, then Rebirth is it's the Josh Donaldson for baseball fans. It is, you hit a deep fly ball, you pimp the fuck out of it, you flip the bat, and then the ball bounces off the wall and you have to hustle your ass into second base. That's kind of how I feel about FF7 Rebirth. It's a double, but it almost was something a lot better.
I feel like it's almost like an inside the park home run with 3 errors as opposed to a double. I feel like a lot of
home run.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the game like is just you're just kind of bouncing your way around until the climax. I do agree with you here. There are a lot of frustrating things about this game with me, but like you said, you know, a couple months separated, sitting back, those things don't bother me. The impact of the story, you know, I've had time to sit and think about it too. So I'm ready to talk about this game. I've made my pieces, you know, I've made my calls. You know, I'm actually ready to talk about like my feelings on this game.
Well, you're in luck. That's this is the place to do it. Ryan, what would you say at the top here for FF7 Rebirth?
I was completely fine with it. I feel like even the games that I adore, there's certain aspects of it that I feel like I annoy me to a certain extent. There's nothing perfect about a game, but none of the stuff that was, I would say, would be annoying in this game was enough to outshadow, just in my opinion, just the story and just the microscope that they got put on the game that I didn't get to experience with the original game. So for me, I just I don't have nearly as many negative things to say or thoughts about the game. I'm just so fucking happy that I get to play it again. I guess realistically, just kind of just continue just to be in the back of my mind as any negative things came to mind for me.
Yeah, and he was like that way through the whole the entire time I was talking to him while he was playing. I was like, yeah, you have to do the fucking Chocobo like fucking thing, and he was just like, yeah, you know, it's whatever. You know, Barrett's still here. Tifa in that bathing suit. You know, you know,
me though. God,
you held it together where in parts where I was like, I'm going to break my PlayStation.
That's the other part of like what I was going to say at the top of the show here is that the whole time I was playing this, I was like, this thing is either pissing me off because I don't want to be doing it, or I don't think this is good or whatever. But the whole time I was playing it, I was thinking like the absolute FF7 diehards are just going to be like a pig in shit in this, because it is like you get to inhabit this recreated open world version of all of these places from the original game to a much greater extent than Remake did with Midgar. Now you have like a bunch of locations like that. So people who are just like live and breathe FF7 are just going to love the shit out of the experience of being in this game.
Yeah, I do feel just honestly just lucky. I really guess that's really all it comes down to, just to be able to just experience it again. I am definitely one of those motherfuckers that are just obsessed, and obviously it's my favorite game of all time, so my bias is extreme. So I have no problem admitting that by any means. But
you want to see every corner, every crag, everything. Around every corner, every blade of grass. Like I want to stay in this world type shit.
Yeah, exactly how I felt.
Yeah. All right. Well, we have a lot to dig into, so let's listen to a bit of music, and when we come back, we'll set up the story of what's going on in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. In Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, once again, you control Cloud Strife, who, along with party members Tifa Lockhart, Aerith Gainsborough, Barrett Wallace, and Red 13, escaped from the megacity of Midgar in the previous game, and they're now hitting the road, the open road, in pursuit of ex-soldier gone rogue Sephiroth, and that is soldier in all capital letters in this game. In the game, they also meet up with Yuffie Kisaragi, who was introduced in the DLC for Final Fantasy VII Remake, and future party members, Kate Sith, Vincent Valentine, who joins the party late in the game. You cannot control him, but he's there. And returning in this game, one of the big changes and big spoilers from the end of FF7 Remake is that Zack Fair is here, who's a character that had died before the events of the original FF7, but is somehow alive in this game. So we have our cast of characters, and just to get the story discussion kicked off, I just want to reiterate something from the FF7 Remake episode, which is that one of the best things about that game, and now this game too, is bringing these characters to life, having much more interaction between the characters, much more dialogue in general, and just making all of these characters feel much more real. And a big credit for me goes out to the voice acting and the dialogue writing between them. So I assume that like this is part of the draw for you guys too, is to have some of these characters from the original game that especially were not big players in Remake or not in there at all. Like Red 13 joined late in that game. He's here the whole time this time. Vincent wasn't in the first game. Now Vincent's here. Zach is here. Kate Sith is here. So what did you guys think about the new characters and how they fit in with the group?
Oh, yeah. Like, okay, so you said like the voice acting brought it to life. Everybody but the person who did Cloud, whoever did Cloud was just pissing me off like halfway through the game. That person is just the worst. And like, I know it's got to be intentional, like, right? Because like Cloud's just like a douchey, like silent emo kid. You know what I mean? But like, there are so many big moments with Cloud in this game that reference the old game where I was just kind of like, that's what you sounded like when you said that. But going back to the other stuff, there were characters in the original game that I did not mess with, and like a whole lot in the framework of my party. One of those people is Yuffie, and Yuffie is to me was one of my most used characters in this game. And we'll talk about some other stuff a little later, but I think it's a great point. They brought her to life so much more than they did in the original version of the game. That like even though she's annoying, she kind of has this like annoying little sisterhood with Cloud and with Barrett, but they use her a lot. When you talk about the dialogue being, like them using way more dialogue than they did, 85% of that went to Yuffie. Like she has the
and
most,
Chadley too.
Yeah, it's just Yuffie and Chadley are 89% of the dialogue in this game. But I think that's a very fair point, and it's exactly like you said. They with the environments, with the music, they bring all these things to life in a way that we did not get to experience the first time. And while some of these things kind of annoy me, it's mostly gameplay stuff, but anything involving the characters, the music, the story that they bring to the forefront and show me in a way that I never really thought about, like that to me is like one of the best parts about this game. Is I do feel like while it's not as good as the first game, it did bring a lot of stuff to life that like, you're in the slog of the game, in the middle part of this game. There's a lot of stuff that happened in this game that I completely forgot happened in the other one, and they kept bringing those things alive. So, like, I'm 100% with you, Dave. Like, this is one of the cornerstones of why I think this game is a great game, are because of things like that.
Yeah, I want to give a quick shout out to some of the voice actors who stood out to me. Of course, John Eric Bentley as Barrett, who again just steals the show in a lot of scenes that he's in. Especially there's a theater part late in the game where Barrett is just hamming it up, and I love it so much. Brianna White as Aerith, Susie Young as Yuffie, Paul Tinto as Kate Sith, great voice, and Britt Barron as Tifa. Lots of other people. Like you mentioned Cloud's voice acting, and at this point, like voice acting in video games is generally so good that when you get something that doesn't feel that inspired, I'm just automatically, especially because everybody else in the game is very charismatic and awesome, I'm just automatically to like, that guy's a good voice actor. That's how they told him to act, because Cloud's a fucking moody boy. And that's just like the impression that he gives off. But I love basically all of the voice cast, except for Sephiroth. I just don't like Sephiroth as a character that much. I'll just say that right now. Sephiroth's boring to me. So yeah, there's that. Aerith and Tifa and Yuffie form like a little girl group in the party, and they're so fantastic together. So I wanted to give a special shout out to the three of them, especially when they make fun of Cloud. That's always entertaining. Love that.
That giggling is what haunted me in junior high. How dare you give them power by saying nice things about the girl group?
Just essentially, I completely agree with what's been said. The voice acting essentially has kind of brought me into the game even further than I originally thought it could. Everybody sounds basically what I assumed that they would sound like. Sephiroth, I guess he's, I don't know. I honestly, low-key thought it's within what I expected. And I think that Cloudy is, I always thought Cloud was kind of a moody bitch, to be honest with you. So none of that really surprised me. I was so fucking excited to play Red 13 at the end of the first, that when they kind of cliffhanged me, I was pretty bitter. But I made sure to completely unleash. He's probably the only one I really would complain about the switch, as far as what they decided to do with his voice. But
Yeah.
Otherwise, it honestly just made it even better for me. It made one of the things I loved about the game originally was the characters, and they made it again. The best part about that was the fact you just get to see everything on so much more of a deeper scale. And shout out to the ladies, because the trio was dope. I loved fucking Yuffie. I actually played Yuffie a little bit. She wasn't, I don't know, just based on how the game played prior, you really didn't get to take full advantage of her character as far as like gameplay and storyline. I think she kind of folds later, but yeah, I think now she's just she's an absolute beast. I don't appreciate her kind of her cuck moment with that came up at one point. There were some parts where I was just a little upset with her, but to be honest with you, she played her role as a little sister. I really love the dynamic between the group and how realistically for how big the group is, how I feel like they shine their moments, and everybody got a chance to really kind of play their part and be a part of the group. And I don't know, just really feel a part of everything. I loved it.
And I think like the game gets off to a really good start early in the game. One of the first things that you do, there's an opening cutscene with Zack, and we'll talk about that in the spoiler section. But one of the first things that you do is you do this flashback scene. One of the biggest, like most famous scenes with Sephiroth from the original game. When they go to Nibelheim, there's a disaster there. Sephiroth loses his shit. And I think that sets this game off on like a really, really strong tone. You get to see Sephiroth when he's kind of normal. You get to see Cloud there helping out. The music is fucking incredible in that scene. You're starting to see like the graphics when like the town is on fire and stuff like that. I think that's like just an amazing opening for this game.
This is one of my favorite scenes in the OG FF7 is when they get to Nibelheim and the cogs and Sephiroth's brain start circulating, and like he's slowly starting to figure things out, and it just launches into this month long like episode of him just like meticulously reading everything about Genova and things like that. So this was like a scene I was really, really looking forward to, or at least a part of the game I was really looking forward to, because this is why I like Sephiroth and from the OG is I feel like his descent into madness was so well done in the original game that this was the one I was looking forward to. And I gotta be honest with you, man, spoiler free, I thought they did a great job. They hit all of the big, cinematic moments that I wanted them to from that, whether it's, them showing you how much stronger Sephiroth is than you in that fight, to you being treated the way you are and Sephiroth being treated the way that he is, going back to your home city. So to me, this is, again, one of my favorite parts of the OG FF7, really set a lot of tones for the entire game. And I think it did the exact same thing in this game, much better than I thought it was going to.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, I was going to say I disagree just slightly with Dave there. Actually, that's one of the reasons I love Sephiroth. I know I see why he says he's boring. I can understand that. But just how badass of a character is from design, just like quite literally his way his aesthetic looks. And I understand he's more of like a quiet-natured character, but you got that. I think he was drawn upon a little bit more as far as that, even that side before his descent into madness. And I feel like, again, the reason he went his madness was pretty warranted, realistically. After everything that you kind of find out, it's like, yeah, okay, fair enough. You like, if you start to think you're fucking created a lab by something that just found out was just fucking shit up, like, it's fair that things might go off the rails just a bit.
Set a village on fire. Yeah.
You might set a fucking village on fire.
Yeah, might kill some innocent people, dude.
You might, yeah, exactly. You might something to try to take over the world. But so, again, I just think aesthetically, originally his sword, to be fair, was probably what kind of started for me, like Jesus. But, yeah, I think his character is pretty cool. And that scene in Nibelheim really was just like, I don't know. I've never really saw that scene before in a game. So the first time seeing that, to be fair, like Dave, you didn't really get that opportunity to see that as a kid, like first top. Maybe you did it 10 hours. I don't think you did, but regardless, like seeing that the first time, like as a kid, I was like, what the actual fuck is going on?
You're getting your first dose of what like a psychopath is. That's right.
Honestly, I was just so caught off guard by it and did not expect that shit to happen. That's really kind of all I could say. So the first time seeing it, if you weren't expecting it, it was like, wow. It was a very, very pivotal moment and clearly like a moment that I'll never forget as far as gaming goes for me. So
yeah, I mean, that recreation of it in this game is really, really good too. Like the climb up the mountain and then coming back down and then disaster strikes in the village. All of that stuff is really good. speaking of being caught off guard the first time that you play this game, one of the main things about the section that this game covers in Rebirth, the section of the original game, and the point that we all kind of figured was going to be the ending of this game, is that moment with Aerith. And this kind of like is like the introduction of one of the things that I don't like about Rebirth. It's not like that plot moment. We'll talk about that in the spoiler section. But the fact that so much of this game is clearly leading up to that one scene, and then a lot of the plot is literally like we're following Sephiroth, and everywhere we go, we're 2 steps behind Sephiroth. So we're just going to keep following Sephiroth from place to place to place to place to place to place. And then we know we're headed for this eventual big scene at the end. One of the most famous scenes in the history of video game stories, which made my main complaint about this game's story worse, in my opinion, which is that I think this game has terrible pacing. It's too long, there is too much, and there are so many things that I think throw off the momentum that big story moments build. So there is let's to give an example for people who played the game, I'm not going to spoil it yet, but like there's this big moment in the Gongaga section of the game with Tifa and Cloud and Sephiroth, big moment that happens. And then, so you got some like story momentum. I'm like, okay, this big thing happened. Like, what's going to happen next? And 5 minutes later, I'm beginning a new open world section, and I have to do a stealth section to catch a chocobo, which is just the absolute pits, in my opinion. So like, this happens.
To be fair, you didn't have to, but you do. No,
you do. Right. You do have to. Like they pretty much make it. What are you going to walk your ass across Cosmo Canyon? Like,
right?
No, you wouldn't do that.
No,
absolutely, no. Absolutely.
Okay, all right. So for the non-sickos out there, you got to catch a chocobo. But like, we had so much story momentum, and it just gets like halted repeatedly in this game. And there are a lot of cool things that happen in the story, and then there are a lot of very not cool things, in my opinion, that happen or that you're forced to do directly after those big story things. So like I said, this game took 70 hours. I stopped doing side content about halfway through the game, and it still took me 70 hours to get through. This is my biggest like criticism about the storytelling in this game, is that it is just too long, and there's too much in between the big moments. Because the big moments, like we talked about in Nibelheim, the big one in Gongaga, the end is awesome. It's like really, really fucking good. And then it is like the world's tallest and deepest roller coaster at the same time. And it's like the whiplash of going all the way up to the top to those moments, and then going down to the center of the fucking earth, and then climbing back up again for another great moment, was like just too much for me personally.
Ryan, do you also get the same feeling that Dave's been holding that shit under his chest for 3 months now?
I feel like the weight is on my shoulders now. Like I said, it's such a weight lifted off of him. You know what? I'm glad. I am happy for you that you got that off your shoulders, my boy, because I can feel it.
Yeah, and I can feel it too. So here's, and I'm not gonna talk about this a lot, but there is something sad to me about experiencing those big moments from the original game in this game, because I know I'll never get to experience them again. Right.
Yeah,
so to me, the filler, the shit, like I only did those things because I wanted to be in this game as long as possible. Did it suck? Yeah, dude, there's a lot of shit that sucks. And is the pacing terrible? It's maybe the worst pacing of any video game that's ever happened. You're literally going 10 hours between big story moments sometimes, but I get your frustration, and I'm glad you popped off, and you're not wrong. But for me, and I would assume probably Ryan, it's just one of those things where it's like, I do not want to leave this, and the more time I spend doing no matter what it is longer than I get to. Now, eventually you're just like, yeah, fuck this shit. All right, let's go beat the game, dude. I've wasted 5 straight weekends where I could be finding a girlfriend to fucking grind chocobo feed. I gotta get out of here, But like, that's at least my perspective on that. Is I understand your frustrations. You're completely correct about them, but you are right. I am a sicko. You know what I mean? I want that so I don't have to leave. That's how much this game meant to me.
Yeah, I am basically the same way. The way I played the game was different, where like I was in no way rushing towards the next scene or anything to the next big plot point. The first thing I wanted to do was like, nice, we got that plot point in the West, so I could go back to grinding and doing everything absolutely the fuck else I could do to draw this out as long as that I can. Because again, yeah, I enjoyed all the little side points, all the side conversations, everything that I could get. I wanted to just absorb it and eat up. So I think, yeah, the way we approached the game was different, Bean and I, compared to you. But I think that it still says a lot, considering that I completely understand as well the pacing and how there were some rough moments as far as the content they decided to have you do. But still, I think that the fact that you were able to enjoy it as much as you did when you got to the core game really speaks to how good it really, really is.
Yeah, for sure. Like, let's just pretend I just spent 15 hours doing open world shit that I hate and going through story moments that I don't care about, like small scale story moments, we'll say. The fact that I still enjoy the big story moments when they come, and the fact that I still enjoy the characters talking with each other and stuff like that does speak to the quality of those good story moments. I just think that they're spread too thin. I don't know, to maintain any sort of momentum as you go. I think that the way probably to experience this is either to not do the open world stuff beyond what you have to do, because like there is a level curve that you have to stay up on, so you do have to do some of that stuff. But to just kind of like do stuff as you see it, or just like say, okay, I got to a new open world zone. This is what I'm doing this week. I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to poke around and do this stuff and not be in a rush. And like, I wasn't in a rush because of, podcast recording deadlines or something like that. But I was kind of like I said, hey, that story moment was really cool. I want to get to the next big story moment that's going to like further this. And then I just get, dragged down in the mud with some of the stuff that you have to do. One thing about the story that I do want to like give a compliment to is this is part of the story of the original FF7, and it like kind of got hinted at in FF7 Remake, but not a whole lot. And then this game starts to really push this storyline, which is, and I won't spoil it, of course, now, but there is something going on with Cloud. Cloud is not who he seems. And this was a big thing from the original game. It's going to be a big thing in part 3 of this remake series. And I think that this game did a really good job of seeding that early and often as you go, better than the original game did. That revelation in the original game about what's actually going on with Cloud completely took me by surprise. I didn't think it was set up very well. Maybe I'm just ignorant and missed it. I don't know. But this game, Rebirth, I think did an awesome job of setting this up and touching on it as you go through the story in a way that I thought is really cool, and it's going to lead to something really cool in part 3.
I have a lot of things to say about Cloud, and I do not feel right now is the appropriate time before the spoilers, the spoiler section to talk about Cloud. So that's what I will say. I think you are right.
Oh, good nigga. I got you. Cloud's a motherfucking boy. You understand me? You hear me? That's my nigga from day one. A1. You feel me?
Yep.
That the enormous goddamn sword. You got the respect of a black man. The size that Barrett is.
I know. They're friends.
A gun arm.
Yeah,
and
they're
he
friends.
still is scared. with his squadron too, by the way, and still scared of this dude. I automatically was like, who? Cloud is, God damn. So automatically they set you off, let you know that Cloud is the one. You know what I'm saying? And I love his character. I really enjoy how he pans out. And I really think they did a solid job. I agree with you. I mean, I played the first one so many times. I feel like I was able to pick up maybe not the first time, but again, I can't discern those two things. I played it so much that I feel like I was able to kind of see all those things build up. The first one is when I played the original as well, but they definitely did a much better job, in my opinion, obviously, with the microscope they were able to put on the characters just to see the build-up. And I love the subtle things. As actually, I think I said this before for the first time, the first podcast, was just the moments between Tifa and Cloud. The unspoken is not like where there's like a cutscene, but there's just, you're running around, maybe in one of the reactors, and all of a sudden you just hear like they make a little comment, and Tifa's like clearly like caught off guard, like you realize like she's like, what are you talking about? It's just this little subtle things that they do really just like are like, oh my God, that's fucking, it's wonderful. You know what I'm saying? Especially if you get people like me and me who are just obsessed about the game and we know everything front to back. I think they did a great job of building up into it and seeing his descent, because it was frustrating as fuck for me at moments where I was pissed at him, which I think again is the whole fucking point. You should be mad. You should hate, like, you should think it's trash how he responds, because that's kind of the point. He's supposed to kind of be douchey so that he has this sudden, you know what I'm saying, essentially redemption, in my opinion. So, I think they did a great job. I love the interactions they have. And I can't wait to see how they did go about this in the third one, because I'm still, even for a person knows everything about the game, feel unsure.
And I just really quickly, I think this is like, you know, if we can liken back to what Dave said about like bringing how they bring the characters back to life. One of the biggest things about, you know, a little bit about the first game, but more importantly in this game is you seeing, while sometimes it's weird that they don't care what Cloud's up to, but seeing how other characters in your party are like starting to notice how Cloud's losing his mind and starting to notice that he's saying and doing shit that doesn't make sense, especially through Tifa and Barrett, who are like the OGs, you know what I mean? So like I Dave, you're right. They do a really good job of like making you be like, no, you don't understand. Like Cloud is fucked up. Like something's seriously wrong with this dude. And they, without spoiling anything, show it multiple times in multiple big moments throughout the story.
Yeah. Yeah, they did a good job with that.
Out screaming in your face, in my opinion, too.
Yeah, it is pretty. There are a couple of them that are like very subtle, and I didn't notice, and some other FF7 super fans pointed it out to me, where it's there, and it's very like cool what they did, but like you're not going to notice unless you're like 100% clued in, which I think is great. One thing also about this game that I mentioned earlier is that Zack is here, and Zack should not be here. Zack died before the events of the original FF7, but Zack is alive. That was one of the revelations at the end of FF7 Remake. Zack's on the cover of this game, so like his inclusion in the story is not a spoiler, but this is one of the things that people were super interested in. We talked about it in the FF7 Remake episode, wondering what are they going to do with Zack? Okay, so Zack's alive now. What's going on here? And this is one of the things that I think I don't want to say like drop the ball, but like it was deeply unsatisfying what happened with Zack throughout this game. I would go like 10, 15 hours without seeing Zack, and then they'd throw in like a 3-minute scene with him and just be like, hey, you remember he's here, right? Okay, now back to everybody else. For the amount of intrigue into like what was going on, this game sure took its fucking time making Zack a part of the events, I'll say. And I don't think this is very good. I thought this was disappointing.
I just think generally the way people view Zack as like a Final Fantasy VII character is like the fact that he has his own video game is wild to me. Like he really was not that important of a character in the grand scheme of things. And it feels like they're really trying to hit you in the head with Zack in this game. So why, right? Without spoiling anything, there's almost zero payoff with like his story in this game. And so now what you have to expect is in the third game, they're really going to lean into it. But like, how could they do that? And still, I don't know. I've always thought Zack just got like way too much like, he's such a big character. Like, yeah, he's important to Cloud and like the reason Cloud exists. But like, how cool is he really? I feel, without spoiling too much, that Zack is just a vessel to explain the multiverse theory through cutscenes. I cannot explain that any better, but I really just feel like he's not important of a character to be getting this much screen time. So what it really has to be is like, they want you to know, like, hey, this theory is real. We are showing it to you through a guy Aaron Angle doesn't really even care about. That's the best way I can talk about this without spoiling anything. I feel like he's more of a plot device than like his own standalone great character.
Like, I think Zack is fairly likable as a character. Like, I like the performance for him. I think he's pretty cool, but he's just not really a part of this game. How does it fit?
How does it fit?
I think it fits. And like, this is something that I think we're going to end up saying a bunch of times in this non-spoiler and spoiler section is, well, we'll see what happens in the third game, because like, this is the middle part of a trilogy. And so Zack is a big, like, Zack might be the number one thing. Well, number two behind the one we'll talk about later. That thing. But Zack is like, you're right. He's important, but he's barely a part of this game. If I didn't do this, but I'm just going to guess that Zack is in the game for less than an hour of the 70 hours that I played, which for a guy that's on the cover of the game feels like they were like, yeah, we brought him back. Now, what are we going to do with him in this game? And they're like, we don't know. And then we're just going to have a couple of scenes with him doing, like you said, like multiverse stuff, because that is something that's going on here. And then there's like a big climax to it that we'll talk about later. I don't know if it makes a whole lot of sense, but it sure looked cool. And then we leave this game with fewer answers than we started it with, I feel like, when it comes to Zack. So I don't know. This is something that like seemed super important, and then like to me did not feel important as I was playing it.
Spoiler alert here that I disagree. I know that you guys may be surprised by that, but yeah, the original game, you saw Zack you've seen Zack in this game infinitely more than you saw him in the original, considering his part that he actually played, in my opinion, which essentially makes up who Cloud is, the character that you see, and even to a point ends up still becoming, in my opinion, to a extent. And you see him get absolutely mobbed, and that's only if you go and do side DLC stuff that's hidden. And even otherwise, you get almost no information about him at all, what happened, how he introduced realistically at all. So I was always so interested in how Zack really played his part, what he actually did in between the moments of like, what happened to him and Cloud, and actually where he ended up passing. And so I'm actually very happy that they did, because I thought he was a badass character, because essentially Cloud got his badasses from him. So that automatically, in my opinion, made Zack dope, because I always thought Cloud was cool. So seeing him more in this one, and again, I admit I'm confused to a good extent about what exactly he's going to end up doing, but I still think it helps explain just a bit more, again, the fact that why Cloud is such a badass, and why, Aerith was torn, and the relationship and all those things, and who she's talking to. And I think which, I guess, realistically leads to what you're saying is a little bit of a tease. What's going to end up, I assume, being explained in the third one, which I'm excited to. I enjoyed playing him. I always wanted to play him, so being able to use him was badass. And I don't know, I thought the parts that he did play, which again, I do think were a little underlying, still, had their impact when he was on screen. I enjoyed when he was there. So in my opinion, I was super happy that he got infinitely more screen time than he did. And, I was excited just to see what they would do with him. And I assume that we'll get more of him in the third one, but I wasn't upset. But I do understand why you could say that you didn't, maybe you wanted more of him, which I'm not sure if that means that you dislike him or like him, but did you want to see more of him?
No, so here's the thing, is you came at it from a really interesting perspective, because in the first game, you almost, like, he is literally not in the game at all unless you do, like, weird specific 90s video game stuff to trigger a cutscene. Like, so this is what I'm saying is, like, why it's surprising to me is because, like, when I say he's not like an important character, it's not like Stridon, you're right. Like he is important to Cloud in a lot of ways. But in the OG game, they barely reference him, and you only really get glimpses of him if you do really weird, ultra mega specific shit. I can't remember what it was, but you had to do weird things to trigger these Zack cutscenes. And I understand why he is so important to Cloud as a character. And I approve, hey, cool, yeah, Zack, cool. But it's just like, in the grand scheme of things, why is he so important important. And like Dave said, yeah, I guess that's why we have the next game.
Yeah. It's also like they're rolling in Crisis Core stuff into this remake trilogy. They're rolling in, as far as I know, they're rolling in Dirge of Cerberus stuff into it. So like they're really pulling everything FF7 into this. And like, I think Zach was number one on the list there. I mean, like the final boss from the Yuffie DLC of FF7 Remake was from one of those like extended FF7 games, and it is like god awful. So I'm glad they're focusing on Zach instead of that for this game. But yeah, it's just kind of like disappointing that like we spent the last 4 years being like, oh, Zach's back. What's the story significance going to be? And it turned out to be, we're not really sure. Wait till the third game. We'll find out.
I'm hanging out with Biggs.
And I don't really think that's a negative thing, just because you're still interested in the story and you're curious about how things are going to turn out. I don't think being curious about how a story is going to turn out, how a character develops, is a bad thing, in my opinion.
No, it's not bad
until the third one. Until the third one, obviously, they could ruin it. They could Game of Thrones this, which I pray to God they don't. But I'm just saying, in general, though, my thought is like, okay, they've piqued my interest. I want to see what happens with his brother. What the fuck has he got going on, and what is his purpose?
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily look at that in a negative way.
And I think that's like where I'm going to wrap up this story section. Is I was just about to say that exact same thing, is like, there's so much of this, because it's the middle part of a trilogy, that like by nature, we're just going to have to wait. We were not going to get every storyline resolved in here. And like, I didn't expect that. But I just expected a few things to be more important to this. And now we're going to have to wait for the third game. And so like a lot of my opinion about the remake trilogy has kind of changed, especially from a storytelling perspective. Whereas like, I really loved what they did in FF7 Remake. And there was like a slight bit of, well, let's see what happens in the rest of the trilogy. Now that feeling is even greater because of a couple things we can't talk about until the spoiler section, where like, now I'm like, who fucking knows if this is going to end up being good or not? Like, they're setting up a bunch of things. Things have gotten way more complex. I mean, it's Tetsuya Nomura working on these games. So of course things have gotten really complex, and yeah, we're just going to have to wait until part 3, which we don't know the title of. I'm calling it Final Fantasy VII Reloaded until further notice, following the naming scheme.
That's funny. I've been calling it Final Fantasy VII Tokyo Drift.
Yeah. So until Final Fantasy VII Tokyo Drift Reloaded, we're just not going to we're not going to get answers. We're not going to be able to form a full opinion about how they're telling this story. It's interesting for sure. And like Ryan, you're right. I am interested. So that's good. They have held my interest, but they've introduced a lot of stuff now that was not in the original game. And so it's a complete unknown. Like if they were to just remake the end of the original game, I would just like to see that remade, right? But now they have so much more that there's so much more unknown. And like I said, we're not going to know until 2029 or something like that.
I don't know what their plan is. At one point I heard them saying like a 10-year plan, and I don't know. Like they're trying to make this a big thing, but I just hope they just keep it simple, make the third game, and then just give us what we want. Because yeah, the Vincent said, God, I was surprised how much they were in it, considering they didn't get playtime. Like at one point, even though I knew they weren't going to be played, I was like, we're going to play these guys? Because goddamn, they're in this a lot. So I still enjoyed though the just being there and how just really gassing me up. I cannot wait. Because in my opinion, I think they're going to be some of the most fun characters to play.
Yeah. All right, so let's put a pin in story talk until the spoiler section. Let's listen to some music. We will come back and we'll talk about how this game looks and sounds. So talking about visuals in FF7 Rebirth, I think the first thing to just kind of touch on is the fact that we have some of the more iconic locations from Final Fantasy VII outside of Midgar, like Costa del Sol. We have Nibelheim, we have Calm, the Gold Saucer, we have Cosmo Canyon. All of these places are now blown up and rendered in glorious 4K HD. So I think that I think that these look incredible. But you guys are the FF7 super fans. So what is it like for you guys to walk into the fucking Gold Saucer blown up like this?
Oh, dude, you got 6 hours, because this to me is the best part of this series. It's not the story, because I know the story. Do I? I don't know. But it's revisiting these old locations and seeing them. And dude, Dell had this monitor at GameStop that he wasn't they were going to throw away, and he brought it home, and it's just like the best television I've ever looked at in my entire life. Like everything looks great on it. And he brought it back while I was playing Final Fantasy VII on our regular living room TV, and it changed everything up for me. The locations are perfect. Walking the Gold Saucer was fucking beautiful. I was never one of those people that was like, oh, Costa del Sol is so cool. It's so good. Every location you visit in the game is exactly what you want it to be and more. We could talk about every location specifically and why forever and ever and ever and ever. But to me, this was one of the, ooh, I can't wait to get to Costa del Sol so I can see what it looks like. Or, ooh, I can't. And just FYI, and I won't go in depth. The reactors in this game, everyone you visited was fucking perfect. They were so well designed. They looked so awesome. The Mako pools looked great. I loved every bit of it.
Yeah, fuck, man. Literally leading up to the game, because there was a point where I ended up going on vacation, so I stopped playing the game for 6-7 days, and Diddy ended up essentially getting ahead of me. And basically, we talked back and forth, even before even playing it, dude, how is good is Gold Saucer going to be? That was one of our main points of conversation, was how good is Gold Saucer going to be? Because it's iconic. I mean, between the music, the fucking goddamn Chocobos, baby. It's all fucking awesome. And a lot of the storyline unfolds within that, which I also think was great. And even the location within Gold Saucer, I thought was all done so well. It was it was awesome. And I agree. Every location, I couldn't wait to see how they did it. And I thought they did each one perfectly. I loved it. Again, I wanted to be in the universe as long as I fucking possibly could. And I did absolutely every single fucking thing that I could to make sure that I could do so, except for, again, you're talking essentially in-game content. So I agree. It was fucking awesome. The story, again, I know the pacing was a little off, but just the story leading into those moments where you knew you're about to go to a place that you fucking loved. That music was about to splash, baby. You knew. That's one of my favorite parts, was just knowing the music that came with those locations was one of my favorite parts. How good is that music going to sound, baby, on this 4K, you know what I'm saying, HD, and it didn't disappoint ever, as far as I concerned.
Yeah, one of the things that really stood out to me and got me excited about going to new locations, because we'll talk about this in a second. I was not very excited about what gameplay was going to mean when I got to a new one of these big open zones. But what was exciting to me was I'm going to get to hear the music for this new place, because the reorchestrations and the arrangements of the great soundtrack by Nobuo Uematsu in the original game that's now has this full orchestration. And so the people who are credited with this soundtrack are Mitsudo Suzuki and Masashi Hamauzu, some names that we've heard in previous Final Fantasy games before. And this is one of the coolest parts about this game, in my opinion. Final Fantasy VII might have the best soundtrack in Final Fantasy, in my opinion. Certainly people have their favorites. This is undoubtedly one of the best. And so to hear these reimaginings and reorchestrations, when I'm walking up the bridge to go to Cosmo Canyon and you start to hear the drum beats, because the Cosmo Canyon song, even in the original game, is incredible. Yes. I love it. Yes. And then when the drums start in this, I'm like, oh fuck, here it comes. And I get chills, it's coming. The music in Nibelheim as you're walking around is crazy, sad and beautiful. And the music in Calm is incredible. So this is one of the coolest parts to me, along with, you get the visual side of recreating these places, but then the reimaginings of those classic songs is what does it a little bit more for me. And so like this soundtrack is like wall to wall, just really good and super varied too. The official soundtrack has like 8 discs, like hundreds of tracks in it. So there's a lot of music going on here.
Well, yeah, and they combine themes throughout a lot, like which is really, really cool. So you kind of hit it on the head. Like, you know, we didn't talk, and what I was going to say was like me and Ryan had been talking about Cosmo Canyon, and like we can't wait for that theme to come in. We can't wait walking up to Cosmo Canyon was way crazier looking than I thought it was going to be. Like they had a lot more going on than I originally imagined. But one of the things I want to talk about is like not only do they do things like they like cross people's themes, but they also use music from the original games in different. So okay, best way I could describe it. So there is this point in, I believe you're in Gungaga, and you're just at this lady's house who's like, yeah, you guys can chill here, you're just gonna keep that sword on you the whole time. Okay, cool, you can sleep here or whatever. But Yuffie is like sitting on this chair and she's singing about how bored she is, right? It's a cute little song that Yuffie does, and it's like whatever. But I watched a video and she is literally like the cadence to the song that she is singing is her theme from the original Final Fantasy VII. It's like something like, I'm so bored, I'm out of my mind, something, and it's literally note for note her theme from the original Final Fantasy VII. So not only is the soundtrack perfect and like the biggest like cue to me like of excitement of going to a new place like it is with you, Dave, but they also use it in a lot of really interesting and cool ways, like for the fans. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I had written down here that if scientists wanted to study if there was a lethal dose of leitmotif and just all the ways that like notes or sections or like a short little melody from the original Final Fantasy VII theme will be like remixed into different situations. Like if you wanted to find out if there was a fatal dose of that, this is the game to find that out. And the three of us are still alive, so it's not enough, apparently, to kill somebody. But
they literally do it all the time.
All the time. So, like, with the Final Fantasy VII theme, they might just take a couple of notes and just make a little sting out of that for when you scan a crystal out in the open world or something like that. Aerith's theme must be woven into 30 songs, conservatively, throughout the soundtrack. Okay. Same with Sephiroth's theme. So, like, this is something that Uematsu is famous for as a composer, but then these other composers who've taken on the rearrangement for this game have just like done the most with this. So I love there's a part in the game where Aerith sings and she's singing a song, and the song is not her theme like that one thing with Yuffie, but parts of that song have her theme woven into it. And so when you hear those familiar melodies, when they're connected with something that she's doing, that draws out something, especially if you love the game or if you love the music and how it connects to the characters. So that's like the main thing that stuck out about this soundtrack to me, is just how much they varied up these recognizable themes, put them in other songs to let you know, like, you know, what emotion should we have during this? What characters are involved here? What characters are involved that they're not on screen, but the music is hinting that they're involved here.
And they do that all the time.
Yeah. Like the Temple of Ancients is like an incredible example of this late in the game.
Yeah, I agree. The music in Final Fantasy VII is the greatest soundtrack in low-key, low-key ever, and just not in video games, just in general for me. That's one of the reasons I think that is really showing off here in this game, which again is one of the reasons I feel like it's hard to hate on at any point, is because, like, I really think, first of all, real quick, a shout out to David, his ability to pronounce Asian names. Like,
every name, everyone.
I'm practicing hundreds of podcasts.
I know for a fact, Bean was thinking about it as soon as he said that third name. He was thinking for
roast me. I was gonna say my boy Nobuo.
God, yeah, I was like, okay, my boy is able to pronounce. But that said, I think that, he cares really about, like, genuinely gives a fuck about how fans feel. And I think realistically, you're taking a game that was 3D sure, but realistically pretty fucking linear, and then trying to expand upon that in a new age, like 15, 20 years later, where a game that nowadays things are so fucking fast paced, and trying to adapt that to a modern age. I think, yeah, there's a lot of filler in it realistically in the end. I mean, honestly, that probably could have gone without, but I still respect the fact that he cares enough just to do the best that he can, to just try to give you anything he can to try to extend your time that you can be in the universe, because I think he cares just as much as we do about this game. And I think that's lacking nowadays in creators now, where they care about the game as much as the fans do, where most nowadays creators care about the fact they get that paycheck at the end and how much money they can generate. He cared, and those little subtle things like the music, I think literally there's like 1,000 different variations of that fucking Chocobo song, and I loved every single one of them. Like,
yeah,
you took 2 steps, it was a different variation, bruh. And when you took another 10 steps, guess what? It's a new variation. I loved every one of them, and I think that really shows, because that takes a special person. Like, yeah, I want you to really set a toe where I want the fans to love every second that they're in this universe. And I think if you are really a fan, even with those little moments that are drag, like, it's hard not to be charmed by being there in that universe, like, all the time. And I think the music really sets that tone. Without it, I think the game really just becomes, like, forgettable. Not completely, but I mean, without the music, dude, I mean, God, I don't know what the game would be without it.
And it helps you deal with the pacing. Like, right, like, pacing is a huge issue, but that's one of those things, like, looking forward to going to new places, hearing like the little, like, idiosyncrasies and how they do things with the music and the environments and the settings and the enemies and all these different things. Like, that's what controls the pacing, is constantly taking in content that you have already absorbed and seeing it in a different light. It makes it easier to get from one point to another point when you have so much to experience in between the two.
Agreed.
Yeah, I agree. I think the music carries as much weight as any single other thing when talking about people's connection to Final Fantasy VII, for sure.
Agreed.
I mean, even to this, I can, in a completely unrelated situation, if I hear Aerith's theme or Tifa's theme or something like that, I might just start crying. Because the connection is so strong. And I don't even like the original Final Fantasy VII. That's how good this fucking music is.
True, bro. Well said.
Good stuff. So again, credit, of course, to Uematsu for the original music, and then to Suzuki and Hamauzu for the rearrangements for this game. Fantastic.
Such good pronunciation, Dave.
I feel like you were showing off at that last point.
I feel like you were showing off. I feel like you were flexing, dude.
But I'm
a little bit of a flex.
This is my podcast. I'm allowed to flex my C- Japanese pronunciation every now and then.
It didn't feel like C-. That's all I'm saying.
I was impressed.
All right. Well, let's listen to a bit more of that music, and then let's come back and talk about the gameplay in Rebirth. So we have mentioned this before, and so for this gameplay section, like, we'll talk about the combat here in a second, but we're not going to talk about how the combat system works, because we spent a while talking about that in the remake episode, episode 107, I think I said it was earlier. So go listen to that. It's a fun episode. We talk about the combat. But what's new in this game, when combat is concerned, because it is mostly the same system, is they kind of like, they got you to like the midpoint of an RPG progression system in the first game. Like, you had like your mid-level spells on your mages, you had like your pretty decent abilities on everybody, and then this game just kind of takes you from that mid-level up to like that lower high level, we'll say. Like, if you really worked, you could unlock some of those very high level spells in this game. So what it does add to it are most notably a thing called synergy attacks, where 2 teammates or 3 teammates can gang up and do an attack together. even teammates that are not in like the active 3, like people can hop off the bench to do something, which is pretty cool. And then one other thing I liked is you can summon in any fight now, which is cool. And then just taking the combat up in complexity, I think, with those higher level spells, kind of remixing people's abilities a little bit. You still have like this basic system, this action combat with the charging bar. When the bar is full, you can do a skill or a spell or use an item or something like that. So those synergy attacks add something cool. And frankly, I think the biggest addition to this combat system to mix things up is you just have more characters to play as now. You can play as Yuffie, you can play as Red 13, and they play very differently from the other characters. I think, Ryan, you mentioned earlier that Yuffie is just like a monster in combat. She's my favorite character to play as because she could basically just kill anything by herself because she can do most things. So, yeah, new additions to combat. What did you guys think?
Yeah, dude, Yuffie literally has a spell that like can find the weakness of an enemy and then just exploit it over and over again, turn herself into 2 people and then like immediately stagger them. The best point you could have made right here is like I don't think the battle system differentiates too much from the original system. It's pretty much the same with a couple of more options. I didn't use the synergy abilities as much as I'd like because I didn't really pay attention throughout the battle how to stack the synergy abilities. I thought they were very cool and super useful, and Stry was telling me the whole time how he was using all these different synergy abilities. I was like, I don't think I'm too busy using Yuffie's wind move. But the biggest thing is like, okay, so how do we take the same battle system, make it more interesting? Give them more options, make the enemies more complex, and we add new styles of fighting. Arrington, I know you played Red 13. I could barely play as Red 13. I really never used him throughout the entire game because I was too busy like focusing on other things. But like, you know, for it being as similar of a battle system as it was, like not only did I have to go through that phase again where I was trying to like figure out how to do it and all these things, it was also introducing new elements to me as if I had not played it in 5 years. So I love it. I love Yuffie. I'm a Cloud, Yuffie, Barrett kind of person. That was always my team. So, yeah.
Yeah, so as far as the fighting goes, I mean, this game is so fucking good.
It's so good.
It's so good, and I think they did. I was also curious as how they were going to transition from the first game into the second one and make you feel like, okay, you just level or high levels as far as your character level, and then you're going to transition to this next game. How are they going to make you feel like that didn't happen? And I feel like it was fairly seamless. I didn't feel like this essentially like a jump.
That's a very funny point. That's a very good point.
I didn't feel like I was like, okay, I've just lost all my shit or anything like that. It just, I don't know. It just felt natural, which I thought they did well with. And the synergy, I loved imagining the synergy because, again, it just adds to that overall, because the synergy abilities would increase and get stronger and be better, and then you have more access to more depending on your relationship with that character. So it just gave you incentive for the overall battle systems. Like, you know, you don't have to do these extra side quests, but if you want to build that relationship, next thing you know, you and baby girl Tifa are doing a combo, just dirty shit. I'm just saying that I was on them synergies. He's right. I was on them synergies.
Jump off your hands.
I was on them synergies, baby. The synergies were so cool. And I think they really, again, just really add to the whole point of the game, which I really think they really, again, what I really liked about the game, which the parts that were felt dead, if you really were into the game, you paid attention, not to say that anybody necessarily wasn't, but if you were paying attention to this to a certain extent, all the side quests really essentially were about team building and helping you dive into your relationships with your team. And again, all that tying into the battle, I think was badass. And I loved how they incorporated that. Again, just making you feel closer to the team. So I thought those are awesome. And again, if you unleash them, you really can become insanely powerful. And I think it's cool that you can kind of button mash if you want to. Tifa got you on that, baby. Goddamn.
Yuffie too.
Yuffie too. That's a fact. I know. That's why I wanted to bring Tifa up first, because Tifa, like Yuffie, is so goddamn strong, and Tifa also is insanely powerful. But like you got to put a little work in with Tifa. You can butt mash, and then you got Yuffie, which just makes it absolutely free. Again, as they've already described. So I'm not even going to say too much about her. Just know she's strong as fuck, and that I agree. And then you got Red 13, who's, again, I think he's a little eccentric, and his character design is a little different than what I expected him to be when it comes to the fighting style. But I actually ended up thinking it was very cool because if you really think about his storyline and who he is, he's a protector. And I think his battle style even incorporated with that. So I really think that if you really think about it, they really thought about the characters, their battle styles, and who they were and how they tie in the story. And again, it just makes me love the game so much more because the dude that's making this game really gives a fuck about this game. And again, of how it comes. And he said himself, this is supposed to be his life's greatest work. So I feel like I can see that in the little small things and details that they put in. And I agree. I think even like the backseat thing, which I didn't really necessarily figure out till later, the fact if you like a character drops, you could have people come in and help out. I mean, honestly, it just feels like he really thought about every aspect of this game that he could. And to be able to prove upon that first game's battle system, I didn't think he was going to be able to be honest, because I always thought the first one was already so good. But again, the second one comes in without making it too flashy and too over the top like a lot of games end up doing. They still stayed grounded while adding the depth to the game and as far as the battle systems go. So I thought it was great, bro.
And how cool looking were the synergy abilities?
Bro, just
like in the middle of battle when it slowed down time for a minute, set them up. Dude,
summons are great, dude. So all of it just felt so bad.
The bosses were great.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ryan. I thought Final Fantasy VII Remake was one of the best like action RPG combat systems ever made, and this is better. So this is like the for all complaints I had about, pacing and story things, and then other gameplay stuff we'll talk about that I don't love. Every time I got into combat, it's consistently engaging. You have to use strategy. You have to think about who's in your party, what they're doing. You have to use people to their strengths. Like you said, Red 13 is a block and parry focused character. So you have to use him that way to be most effective. All of his stuff, like his skills and the way they synergize together, is based on that. Yuffie's a materia thief, so she should have command of all the elements in some way. So she does. Her ninja star can use all of the elements that might be a weakness for an enemy. So using that is helpful. Aerith, as she becomes more powerful, if you get her wards set up on the ground, if you can stack a couple of those, she just becomes like a fucking death cannon of spells. And then we have the classics from the original game, like Tifa's beating the shit out of people with her bare hands. Barrett's got the gun arm for range stuff. And then you can customize people to help out in areas where you might need them. Like I always had Barrett be an extra healer, even though that's technically Aerith's main job, I suppose. There's so much strategy that goes into it. And then just adding in higher level abilities, adding in new characters with unique playstyles, adding in those synergy attacks, letting you summon in every fight. It just it ups the strategy. And I will say there were probably just the final boss was probably the most challenging thing in either of the two remake games so far. And I had to use everything I knew about the combat system to get through that fight.
Dude, you know how I just save up items all the time? I'm an item hoarding bitch, dude. I did my best to save every item in this game, and I ran out of almost all of them in that fight. That final boss fight was so hard that it literally forced me to use all of the items that I collected. I was like, oh shit, I'm going to run out of items. And I've been doing a really good job. But anyways, real quick, just FYI, Aerith, I really, really wanted to focus using her in battle because of what may or may not happen to her. So I just dedicated myself through all the shittiness of playing Aerith. And by the end, she was by far my best character. Wasn't even close.
Oh yeah. She's a monster. Other than Yuffie, she was the biggest damage dealer and offensive weapon on the team.
999.
Her ability to control the battlefield is insane.
Double spell ward. Yeah. Jesus Christ, man.
Yeah. She had the double spell ward. Yuffie had the ability that made a literal copy of her that just, you press the button to throw the shuriken, the copy throws the shuriken too. All that stuff.
I'm telling you, best party. Cloud, Yuffie, Aerith, and you win the game.
Yeah, you clean up for sure. So, other than combat, there's a lot of other gameplay stuff to touch on. So we mentioned earlier these sections from the original game have been blown out into these big open zones. It's not open world in the same way as like, you can go anywhere at any point. It's more like you progress on a linear path through open zones. And so when you get out of Midgar, you go to the grasslands area, and it's this big open zone. You got a lot of stuff to do. When you're done with that, you move on. I think the one after that's Junon. So like you have a big Junon area, and so forth. And there's like, I don't know, like 8 of these throughout the game. It's part of the reason why the game is so long, because there are so many of these big open zones. So I'm going to guess that Ryan loved being in these because it just meant being in the world of FF7 in this, HD, 3D, all of this stuff.
I hated it. Actually, I appreciate you assuming, but no, you're absolutely right. I loved every second of my boy. You're right.
Yeah. Aaron, I think I've got a hint from you that you didn't love all of this. Am I right here?
I loved all of it.
Okay,
but
I am wrong.
No, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. It just, by the time, you can only put so much time. When I play like solo RPGs, like I just play them straight through. It might take me 6.5 months. Looking at you, Persona 5, but I don't play any other game until I finish that game. And it just felt like when I thought I was getting to the last area, there was another area. And not only was there there were 3 more areas. I was just like, oh my God, there's so much. Like, so I had to pick and choose like whether or not I was going to get bored with this game or whether or not I should just go beat it so I can see the ending. I really honestly think my biggest question coming into a Final Fantasy VII Remake from the first game was, how are they going to do the open world part? Like, and I can understand how they can do Midgar, like, right? Like I get that, like they can self-contain that and it'll be fine. And they did, and it was fine. My biggest question coming into this game was, how are they going to do the open world part? Like, obviously you're not going to be able to get an airship and fly around from location to location. How are they going to do it? And I thought they did a really good job. Yes, it was dense. Yes, there were a lot of things that I had to do that I didn't want to do. Was it maybe too big? Sure. But in terms of like what I expected them to do versus what they did, I really do think they did an awesome job with the open world concept.
So the open world concept, let's talk about that. What they did here was they made each of these open zones full of activities to do. And it is every open world trope in the book, even things that like Ubisoft isn't really doing in all their games anymore. So you have towers to climb to reveal icons on the map. And when you go to those icons, you'll have a little thing to do. Maybe it is digging for treasure. Maybe it's a combat challenge. Maybe it is collecting intel for Chadley to Chadley's back, and Chadley might have the most dialogue in this game.
He's the worst.
He's the worst. So you might have to scan something for Chadley. You might have to go to these locations to learn about the summons from that area. There's so much stuff to do. And I think that there's way too much. And I think that if they cut maybe half of this out, then those things would feel more rewarding and less checklisty. I think there's like a benefit to a lot of the stuff. Like scanning the stuff for Chadley will let you read lore about the area that you're in. So maybe like you're in the grasslands, you can read about how Shinra's been fucking this place up because it's right next to Midgar. You go to Junon, you learn about like the history with like the war and stuff like that in that region. That's kind of cool. Do I need to do 6 of those in that area? I don't think I do. The combat challenges are fun because the combat is fun. Do I need to like use these like restrictions in combat against like regular enemies? I don't really think I need those. I could just do like the mini bosses around the map. And that's just kind of like the feeling I got from the open worlds is there's so much, and you do need to do the stuff because you need experience to stay on the level curve. And then you get to that point that Aaron was talking about. And for me, it was in Gongaga going into Cosmo Canyon where I was like, I don't know if that's the exact order. The Mount Corel is in there somewhere. Is somewhere in that, like kind of in the middle of this or like late middle of the game, I just decided, like, for my mental health, I can't do any more of this shit. I don't want to. And then there was one section later where the traversal on the chocobos was so fun that I did that because it's fun to like fucking jetpack around on a chocobo. That was kind of cool. But there was a point where I was like, I can't scan anything else. I can't do more of these treasure hunts. Like, I don't know. It felt like an open world game from 2009 or something like that.
Let me ask you a question for you, Dave. So I did have a question. So if you feel like at one point you said that you think that maybe the proper way of going about it is just simply not doing those things, do you feel like if you had taken that initial mindset and essentially not did the extra side quests from the beginning, what do you think your outlook of this game would be dramatically different or only slightly?
Well, it's interesting because like I said, I think that you have to do some of this because you get a lot of experience for doing it, and raising Chadley's intel level in the areas by doing these activities helps you out, like as far as, making your characters more powerful. And if you didn't do this, I think you'd be below the level curve and the game would be much more difficult. So I don't think I would have enjoyed that. Like, I think the right way to do it would have just been like, do half of it. But like, it's the checklist. It's like that gamer brain mentality where it's like, they give you a list of stuff and Chadley's like, Cloud, I need you to do this other stuff. And you're like, okay, well, I'll probably get something cool if I max this out. So I'm going to go do that. But it's just so much. I couldn't do it. Like, I was like getting very frustrated with the amount of stuff.
No, I completely understand that.
It essentially turns into Far Cry, right? You're playing a Far Cry game and you're having a lot of fun playing it. And then you're like, well, I got to unlock this part of the map so I can figure it out. I guess I got to go climb 9 towers or whatever. So I understand your frustration. And to me, this is like the only indefensible thing about the game in general is, regardless of how much time I want to spend in the world and see every nook and cranny, like the jungle, dude, like I'm about to cry. The jungle, dude, straight up made me almost want to take a break from the game because of how annoying it was to have to navigate to get to the Chadley intel or to get to a thing that would make my summons stronger, even though I barely use summons. Like, like I'm a completionist, I'm a grinder. I want to do these things, but I completely understand your level of frustration with like doing the same stupid thing over and over. Like, for as many, like for as much as the game improves as you go along, like the side quests and the map intel stuff, it stays the same. Like at the beginning, it's kind of cool because you're exploring, but like I said, by hour 65, you're like, oh my God, another one. Can we just can we just end the game? I get it.
Dude, the side quests are terrible. I hate the side quest design in this game so much.
Almost all of them. Yeah.
There's just no imagination to them. Like, they're almost like MMO style side quests where it's just like, can you go out here and like find my dog, and then my dog's going to run back to my house. You'll get in a couple of fights, and when it comes back, it's over. Or my chickens are loose. There's a chicken collecting side quest.
I don't want to talk about. Look, Stry made a really good point earlier, saying like a lot of these little dumb things were side quests to raise your relationship with some characters, which in turn made them better with you in battle, and affected some of the story. So you can see why, like, some of these things are important if you're a battle perfectionist, and some of these things are important if you're a story character build, like completionist kind of person. But it's like, why do you have to make them so annoying? Why do some of these things, like, we are in 2024, why am I playing a JRPG designed like it was made in 1997 in 2024? Like, and that's kind of the game it is.
Yeah, so those cycles were rough.
It's interesting, like, so Final Fantasy VII Remake had terrible side quests also. When I replayed the game, I skipped almost every single one of them, and I was all the better for it. Final Fantasy XVI has some of the worst side quests in gaming. So I just think that Final Fantasy in general, and I didn't play the MMO. I assume they're shit because it's MMO side quests. But I just think that Final Fantasy in general just has an idea about a side quest, and the idea is like, let's just give them something very simple to do. There's not going to be anything interesting about it. Yeah. The other kind of like divisive thing about this game, gameplay-wise, are the mini-games. And this is something that we had also like kind of thought about because the original FF7 is full of things like this too. You know, famous like snowboarding and stuff like that. Snowboarding is not in this game. I wonder if the next game will start with snowboarding. I'm not sure. But there's a lot of stuff mini-game-wise in this. You've got all the Gold Saucer games, Chocobo Racing. There's the Fort Condor Tower Defense game. There is Queen's Blood, the card game. There is the stealth Chocobo sections that I already talked about earlier. Those are dog water terrible across the board. They're
dog water.
Dog water is funny to me. Yeah, I picked that up from Watch Out for Fireballs. It's a very funny way to describe something that sucks. So I've heard a lot of people say that this is like their least favorite thing or their favorite thing about this game is the amount of mini games and the diversity of types of mini games. What did you guys think?
For me, I should say you already know it. For me, I tried to play everything and everything. I absolutely dominated in Queen's Blood. You hear me?
Oh yeah,
I am the number one. Okay, as long as there's respect to my name. I just want to say, like, I played as many of the mini games as I could. There were some rough ones. I was a completionist. I wanted to do everything I could. But there were moments where I was like, I shouldn't have, and I regretted doing them. But again, it was just, it's because I wanted to 100% it, and I think like with most games, if you try to 100% things, there is going to be some grueling tasks. That's kind of what I thought. All those things can be skipped. Some of them can be skipped. So you do have to kind of partake in some. And the ones that I feel like you had to play were fine. I mean, just like in Gold Saucer, I enjoyed myself, but some of the side quests, again, were just abysmal. And some of those encounters, some of those mini games, unfortunately, were part of those side quests. So I I definitely don't think it was the best game when it comes to side quests. Unfortunately, I think they could have done better with that.
Aaron, what'd you think of the like the mini games?
Oh, dude, I was Gold Saucer stuff I'm cool with. The side quest mini games like the Fort Condor and like that little dumbass thing you had to do with a robot, like in the fucking where I don't even know, like it's like Battleship. I don't know. Those were awful, and I feel like their payoff was even worse because I didn't even use the thing that all of those fucking what did they call those things? The Fort Condor and the little robot thing. They were like Geo something or others.
Oh yeah, I forget what they were called.
Right, dude. They sucked. They were terrible.
Part of the reason they suck is, number one, they suck, but number two, they felt like they were leading up to something that was really cool. So like the fact that they wanted me to do these just god awful mini games to get to this thing that I thought was going to be really cool made it feel worse. And all you get is a pretty good summon. Cool. That I didn't even use. Like that's it. Like, Well, there you go.
Yeah, right there. I don't care. Also, it's just a pretty good summon. It's not worth it. But the Gold Saucer, I was fine with across the board. Loved Chocobo Racing. I love that space game. I hated that Rock'em Sock'em Robots game. Fuck that.
Yeah, that was terrible.
I hate Queen's Blood. I intentionally threw the tournament on the ship as you're going to Costa del Sol. I was just like, nah, I don't care. And I let Red 13 beat my fucking ass and then go on to win the tournament. I don't like card games and video games. I don't care. But the Gold Saucer was fine. I read a lot of people like hated Chocobo Racing. I'm like, the fuck did you expect? That was fine.
Chocobo Racing was like it's like budget Mario Kart basically.
Yeah, and like what do you mad? There's a kind of good mini game. Like chill out.
So here's my general thought about the mini games. There are so many of them that some of them are bound to be really cool and some of them are just going to suck just based on the number of them. Like there's at least like, maybe. Yeah, there's at least like 15 to 20 mini games in this game. Some of them are just not going to be good. That's just how it works. So I also loved Queen's Blood. I did all the Queen's Blood quests, all the matches. I would probably buy like a mobile game of just Queen's Blood if they made that.
They're making one.
Okay, well, I'm going to buy it. I'm going to play it. I like that. I did all the Chocobo races. I thought that was really fun. Again, it's like B- version of Mario Kart. It's cool. And then, yeah, there's other stuff that I thought was kind of cool and other stuff that I thought sucked. The Fort Condor game was kind of fun in the remake DLC, and in this game, I hate it so much.
Every bit of it.
Don't know what they did with that, but it's not fun. Like the Mike Tyson's Punch Out, like Rock'em Sock'em Robots thing was terrible. But there's other sequences with like, QTE sequences to do like the military performance in Junon. I thought that was really cool.
Oh like, yeah, like the theater performance. Yeah, those were cool.
That was awesome.
Shit, yeah, agreed.
So it's just like gonna happen when you have a game with this many mini games. Some of them are going to be good. Some of them are going to be fine. You'll forget about them when they're over, and then some of them are just going to be the pits. And that's just how it goes.
Yeah, I agree. They just live in your mind rent free.
Just, yeah, exactly. I wake up in the middle of the night with cold sweats thinking about that fucking Cactar game from the desert. Oh,
dude, I actually love that game.
That's true, though.
Like, I love that. That was an Aerith Yuffie. What was it, Aerith and Yuffie or Aerith and Tifa?
There's either different, way, different ones.
I had a lot of fun doing it as Aerith.
Yeah. So, pretty divisive as far as gameplay goes across the board. Even for the super fans like Ryan, there's going to be some stuff that you don't love, but there's also going to be a lot of stuff that you will really love, especially in my opinion. Again, the combat is best in class. Just A+, no notes about
10
the
out
combat.
of 10.
Yeah, completely agreed.
So let's finish up this spoiler section by doing our closing thoughts, our recommendations, and things like that. So in this section, as we always do, we answer the question, who would you recommend play Final Fantasy VII Rebirth? So Ryan, I'll kick to you first. Who do you think should play this game?
Yeah, baby. But your boy started off. Yeah, I think everyone should play this motherfucking game, nigga. Because I think it's the best motherfucking game ever created, bro. So, with that said, though, honestly, listen to you guys. Like I said, there are some tough moments, but I think realistically, those are things that you can bypass most of those to where if you could really just kind of stick to the core of the game, the game is pretty much for anybody. Anybody that enjoys a good storyline, there's something there for you. Although maybe some downsides. I think if you're going to play this one, you should definitely play the first one first.
Oh, yeah.
But if you decide to skip that and go to the second one, at least do a YouTube or something, because I could really think that you're missing out on that storyline. But I really think the game could be played by pretty much anybody. I think they did a great job of trying to make sure that they thought of everyone, especially as far as battle system goes. The battle system really carries it. The music is really wonderful. And despite those lulls, it's just a really wonderful constructed game. And I think the third one will follow suit. So I don't think you'll be disappointed with the third one either.
There we go. And Aaron.
Basically everything that he said right there, except I did not say the N-word.
There we go.
He was thinking it though. I know who he is.
I was thinking that's why I had to apologize and say I didn't say it.
Yeah. Well, okay. We'll put that on the record. Yeah, I think that, and I do agree. I think that you should play Remake before playing this. If there's some circumstance why you can't do that, cool, play this. Because at the end of the day, there might be stuff in there that I don't personally think is very good. I don't think the open world design is good. I don't think that the story pacing is very good. But within that, there is a lot of stuff that is really good, especially if you value combat systems in RPGs, this is one of the best. So it should go without saying that if you're a big fan of Final Fantasy VII, for most fans of the original Final Fantasy VII, this is going to give you what you may have been dreaming about since 1997, which is seeing this, blown up to a much bigger scale with great voice acting and more characterization for everybody and stuff like that. So I do think there's a lot to like here. It's not a home run recommendation like I thought Final Fantasy VII Remake was, simply because this game is so fucking long, and there a lot of those things that make the game longer are not very good, in my opinion. But there is still a lot here to enjoy. And so I've had a lot of things that I've, critiqued about it, and things that I've outright complained about. But I did overall enjoy this. So it's a recommendation for a certain type of person. And you know yourself better than the three of us do. So if that sounds good to you, then go probably pick this up. And I agree. I'm looking forward to part 3 in the trilogy. Looking forward to seeing where this storyline goes. Looking forward to seeing what they do with, iterating on this combat system and stuff like that. So we are going to do a little bit of housekeeping before spoilers here. Like I said at the beginning, Aaron's one of the co-hosts of mine on a Top 3 podcast, which is a podcast where we do lists and we draft weird topics. And Aaron, is there anything else about a Top 3 podcast that you think would pitch it to folks?
We are all very funny and very smart. Ryan, on the show right now, has been on it before. I think one time we had 38 views for one episode. So, at least 7 of them had to have enjoyed it. But come on over. We make fun of each other. Bloodbath's there,
Yeah, and we're not going to explain anything else about Bloodbath. He's there,
yeah,
though.
He's there, though. Don't look him in the eyes.
Yeah. We'll have to get Ryan on there sometime soon. It's been too long since we did one of those together.
Exactly. I was going to say, I've been on the show. It's completely fine. You could have to go or without it. But no, it's a great show. The boys are hilarious.
I was muted. You popped me very hard right there.
I've been on the show. I had a decent time. It was
okay. Nothing bad happened.
Below or directly at average. But it's a great show. The boys are hilarious. You should definitely check it out. Obviously, what I'm on are probably the best episodes. So if you could definitely try to pin those, that'd be great.
Other than that, the standard 4 of us on the show, it's a solid 3 out of 5. So that is a Top 3 podcast. I talk about it on every episode, but you do get to hear Aaron here, and Ryan's been on an episode before, and we'll have one coming up soon with him, I hope. So for this podcast, you can support the show by leaving a rating and review if your podcast platform allows it. You can also like and comment on the YouTube version of the show. You can join the Discord server and join the conversation about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, as we've all had a bit of time since the game came out. If you want to join the conversation about it, the Discord server is the place to be. It's also a lively, welcoming, and fun community to hang out. And cool, safe online spaces are valuable, and I think that our Discord server is one of those. So you'll find an invite link down in the show notes. You can also support this podcast monetarily by signing up at patreon.com/realdavejackson, where you will get bonus episodes of the show. You will get to vote in polls for games I cover on the show once every month, and some other cool treats. So once again, that's patreon.com/realdavejackson. And that is a lot of housekeeping. So I'm going to catch my breath. We're going to listen to some music. And when we come back, it's going to be full spoiler time for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Hey there, so while spoiler time is upcoming and people are filtering out, here are a couple of announcements and the customary thank yous. I'm actually doing 2 guest appearances on other podcasts this week. very related to today's episode. So first of all, I am on the Fine Time podcast talking about the last 10 years of Final Fantasy. So everything post Final Fantasy 15 we talked about. And on the Crossplay Conversations podcast, we are talking about the state of RPGs in the modern gaming industry. We talked about trends, and we talked about some of the notable 2024 RPGs like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So you can find both of those episodes down in the show notes. I'll put a link. And here are the customary thank yous for the patrons who help support the show. Big thank you to Chris Nelson, the Top 3 Podcast crew, Chris Copleen, Eric Guess, Rick Firestone, Nick Vicori, Jeff, formerly Jerf, Jill, Kieran, Soccer, Cupcake, Kyle, Christian S., Matt aka Stormageddon, JD, Doug Leaf, Jason Emery, Brian Skirsha, Randall, Jake Martin, Jenny E., Marcus O'Neill, and a new patron, Rouge. Thank you very much. And with all of that being said, now let's get into spoilers for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. All right, coming back, and it's full spoiler time for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. And a reminder, number one, we're going to spoil the entire Final Fantasy VII original game in this spoiler section throughout the conversation. Also, a warning, we're not going in chronological order. So that big moment we talked about that is at the end of this game, we're going to talk about that in about 10 seconds. So, full spoilers, and we mean it, for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Now, we can't save this too long. We got to talk about it. The whole game is leading up to what's going to happen with Aerith.
Baby girl!
What's
interesting to me, before we talk about what happens at the end, what's interesting to me is I think they did a good bit of SEO trickery at the beginning of the game. The opening cutscene of this game shows Aerith die, but it's not the way that we thought it was going to happen. It's with Zack. And so we get introduced to Zack's parallel world. In that world, everybody of the main cast is dead. Barrett's dead, Tifa, Aerith, Red 13, they're all dead, being carried away. Zack chases down the Shinra soldiers, he fights them off, he picks up Aerith, but she's dead. And just like the scene in the original game, the white materia falls out of her hair, bounces away. I think this does a couple of cool things. Number one, it makes it so that if you Google Final Fantasy VII Rebirth Aerith death, you might see this and get thrown off the trail of what happens at the end. Because fucking YouTube auto-completed when I typed in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, it auto-completed Aerith death. And I was like, well, shit.
Yikes.
Well, I've already seen it in the opening cutscenes, so maybe that's what they're talking about. So there's that. But the other thing is, it foreshadows. And the rest of this game, there's a bunch of new scenes with Aerith where she seems to know that this is coming, right? And so I think this is a great opening kind of foreshadowing scene for that. When I saw this, I was like, what the fuck?
It's a weird thing to talk about in contrast with the last game. Because, like, ultimately, like, Sephiroth is trying to bring chaos. No matter what the timeline, there's always a chaos. But this game, and I think, like, the biggest thing it does, like, storyline-wise for Sephiroth is it very, very much puts into line without telling you directly exactly what his plan is. And his plan is essentially like, okay, so we're talking about the multiverse theory. It's not a theory. This is what's going on. You have multiple timelines that are set up, and Sephiroth is very clearly trying to bring all of them together. Right. So, like, what does this really mean? So it's really hard to say. We can, like, theorize about it, and again, going back to the entire, like, we're gonna have to wait for the next game type stuff. I just think it's, like, unsafe to assume certain things about Aerith and her death and Cloud and his character and Zack and his importance to what is going on, because it's literally all hypothetical at this point.
No, Nick, I'm gonna assume a hell of shit. So
please.
The fact, actually, you made a great point. I mean, it did seem very confusing, but I think it's very cool. The fact that essentially they're showing that before they showed like the fact that the main point, there was a wound in the earth from essentially, which also kind of cool, Genova's original landing, which caused a gap, and essentially he's using that and bringing all these niggas, just crazy white folk, just jumping off in this fucking hole. And then essentially using that power to summon Meteor. But things have gone dramatically different in this one, where now they're saying essentially that power is not nearly enough, and now he has to take all the powers from fucking essentially the multiverse, my nigga. He's about to Thanos snap niggas, which is just wild to me. Again, he's just taking his power to a different level. And essentially, I guess I'm curious to see, because I for just a second, and I feel ashamed, there was just a second where I thought baby girl's gonna live. I thought Aerith was no, she gonna make it. She gonna be all right. And I think that she is, in a way. I think their way that they're showing it, I think that she's going to be fine in a way, but just not obviously in every universe, where they're showing that Zack is pivotal, and obviously not from the same point, because Zack, I assume, is probably already dead in, I guess, our universe, you know what I'm saying, as far as that goes. And now he's coming from another one to be able to show that Sephiroth is so powerful, the only way they can be beaten is with the connection of everyone from all these universes or these different timelines, essentially, which I think is cool. Really plays into how they're showing the fact that this is about togetherness. This whole game really is showing that the only way we can overcome anything is all of us. You know what I mean? Not just a team. It's going to take niggas from goddamn apparently other universes to cover this shit.
Yeah.
We are in trouble, nigga. But yeah, I really think that, again, I don't know how that's going to play. I do think that obviously it could change because, Diddy is right. The fact is I am still confused at parts. But based on what I've seen, it seems like they're trying to show like this way where maybe Aerith does live in another universe. And I assume maybe with Zachary, because they were showing at one point like Cloud walking up to her at the end of the second game where she had died. And she's like says, wake up. And I think, in my opinion, again, purely hypothetical, is that is in the universe where Zack is the one who saved everyone. That white materia dropped, and essentially he's an essential part where he's being shown a lot. I think obviously he is essentially the reason they survive in that universe is because of Zack, not so much Cloud like it is in this one. But I think when you deal with that scene, that just really shows again this how important he is and pivotal. But again, in a completely different universe. Than their own. Again, that's just my own personal take, but I think they've done a good job with it so far, even though it's still a little confusing. And again, to get to play with my boy at all compared to that first one, I'm curious.
So this is the crazy thing. All right, so like you have two questions, like right, like it. Well, you have the main question, which is Aerith actually dead? Right, yeah. That's the big important question. So the sub questions to that, like to answer that question, are both they both involve Cloud, right? So like the first question is Cloud crazy? Like, right? Yeah. At the end, he's talking to her after she very clearly dies in his timeline. There's a weird fracture moment when Sephiroth actually kills her that maybe leads you to believe that, like, maybe she didn't die, even though she does, but Cloud's talking to her. He's crazy. First question, is Cloud crazy? Is he making her up? The second question that you have to ask after that is he enlightened? Right. So like this was like the biggest like thing to me, because I don't automatically, even with everything going on with the Cloud, like I do not want to just assume my boy is wrong because that's my boy. And I think that's why a lot of the party treats him the way that he does throughout the story. Like even when he does his crazy shit, he's like, no, that's Cloud. Like, that's my boy right there. Like this is the guy who's going to get it done. He's going to get it done. The moment she died and the moment Cloud was talking to her, like my very first thought was like, okay, Cloud's insane. He's making her up. But what if Cloud is enlightened? What if in that like singular moment of Sephiroth killing Aerith, Cloud understood everything? He understood the timelines. He understood, Aerith's role in everything, understands his and Sephiroth's and Zack's role. What if that like moment actually led to like a bit of enlightenment to Cloud? Like Cloud sucks and is moody throughout the whole story. Cloud is never happier until that moment after they, figure out the problem and he's talking to Aerith in that field before they go. So like that, these are the two big questions. And why Cloud is one of my favorite characters of all time is because he is an anti-hero. But why he is so brilliant in the context of this story is that he is an extremely unreliable narrator. Like, we do not know, like, he is our main character and we do not know what's going on with him and we do not understand why he does the things he does. And that's what makes this story so brilliant, is you have a main character who you, one, can't rely on, but two, can't go to for an answer to anything because he's that fucked up. So I made my piece. That's what I wanted to talk about with Aerith's death, is like, what if she's alive? What if Cloud's crazy? What if he's enlightened? You never know because he's such an anti-hero.
Well, one thing I wanted to say, add real quick, is just the fact that, again, I think what people forget is the fact that Cloud, the reason I think that light moment is not necessarily enlightenment, is the fact that he is a part of Sephiroth, Genova, and the entire thing that's going on there because of the spells, that extra something that Jojo did to him after he got caught, after being essentially killed by Sephiroth. You know what I'm saying? And that whole thing that happened, that developed in Nibelheim that you end up finding out. So I think that's the connection. That's what gives him that special something that he's essentially trying to fight at the same time, because that connection is also what's taking him over and sending him into madness. You know what I'm saying? So his connection with that madness is what's giving him that extra little something. But obviously things are just like, Cloud, baby, you've almost killed 8 of us like 4 different times.
Bro,
like, we love you, baby. We know we can't do this without you, but nigga, God, we need you to settle.
And remember how that game ends. Like the game ends with Cloud finding the black materia in his pocket, putting it in his fucking sword, and then says reunion.
And
you know,
knows?
you're right. He's controlled. Where is he?
Sephiroth is still deep in those guts, clearly. And by the second game, from what I said the first time, I'm not sure if did you end up doing a recap, David, on the first game? So have you seen everything? Like the original game,
like the original game,
not remake.
Yeah, I've played the original game. Yeah,
all the way through.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry. I thought you said for 10 hours. That must have been prior. Okay. So then, again, the pacing, as far as at one point, Cloud dives off into like the live stream, and then Tifa essentially kind of goes in there, works through that with him. And she's obviously been doing that at points, but I feel like that's almost a moment that either had already happened. She went to the live stream instead, but that pacing, the way that happened, hasn't happened. So I'm curious, like, what the fuck is going to happen? Is he going to have that moment still where he like fucking just drops off into something and then Tifa saves him?
Oh yeah. I'm very excited
because
for it.
Aerith is way more the prominence that I also like is the fact that they're showing way more of the live stream and its connection, and how like Aerith literally was just talking to Cloud there at the fucking end. No?
Yeah.
Like they were clearly conversating, and and Aerith was doing that prior, but guess what? The only niggas doing that so far have been ancients. And again, I think that Cloud having that ancient in him because of Sephiroth the Genova shit gives him a connection to that he's the only one that has that. So obviously it makes him look crazy when he's talking to Aerith, but I think that connection that makes him cool and being able to see that cool shit also makes him, again, is obviously making him fucking insane. So he's the only nigga capable of breaking it, obviously. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, because everybody else goes into some fucking insanity. He's the only one with obviously help of possibly Tifa to be able to break that. Again, showing that like you need those homies.
Yeah. So let's talk about that moment at the end there. So the question leading up to the end of this game is Aerith going to die or not? Are they going to be able to save her? And the secret answer that I didn't hear anyone predict and that I didn't predict, the secret answer is kind of. And so, first of all, I don't like this. I think they should have just killed her and just we're moving on, because I don't think that Cloud is crazy. I don't think he's imagining her. I think that she is alive and communicating. And the reason, I think this is the reason they put this in, the reason that I think it's clear that he's not just imagining this is because Red 13 can sense her too at the end.
Good point.
And
good point.
It's that, like you guys said, the connection that Cloud now has with the planet in the way that Red 13 just because of his nature, because of who he is and where he comes from, he also may have that kind of connection with the planet. So Cloud is crazy. We'll talk about that in a second, but not in the way that he's imagining something that's not happening with Aerith, in my opinion. She is alive in some capacity. She is communicating with him. She is, I think that, like you talked about in the original game, when Tifa is the one that helps Cloud work through all of his shit in like the last third of the game, I think now that's going to be split up between Like, this is theorizing for the next game. I think that's going to be part Tifa because she's in the party, physically talking and stuff with Cloud. And then part of it is going to be, he's going to talk with Aerith throughout the third game, in my opinion. And it's not made up. It's just her nature as an ancient means that she can communicate from beyond the grave in some capacity. Now that Cloud is able to have this kind of a connection, in my opinion. But I did just want to say, I think they should have just killed her and made everyone work through her death. Now we're going to have this weird thing in the next game where the party, they all saw her die. So they're operating under the knowledge or assumption that she's gone. Whereas Cloud is going to be like secretly like communing with her or some shit. And I just don't personally like that very much. It seems like a kind of cowardly way out of what was the biggest decision they were going to make for this game is, are they going to kill Aerith? And the answer is kind of, which again, to be determined. It could be really cool and affecting the way that people work with Cloud through all of this shit in the next game. And I think it was you, Ryan, that said it's going to take everybody from multiple timelines coming together in the third game to defeat Sephiroth once and for all. And we got a little taste of that in that final boss fight where Zack and Cloud fight together for a short little time. And that was super cool. But I think there's going to be a lot of that in the third game. And so...
Are you scared? Are you scared of that?
Personally, I do think there is great potential for it to just get out of hand or wrap up too neatly, because they've spun this out so fucking big now that it could be bad. It just could be unsatisfying or not make sense or just be too fucking neat when things are so spread out. And I think this is the risk you take when you introduce multiverse into your story, where literally anything could happen. And now so they're anything could happen, so we're going to make a whole lot of things happen. And so I don't know how they're going to wrap that up. But to bring it back to Aerith here, and her death and the effect, I do think, again, that she died in the world that our party was inhabiting. Sephiroth did kill her, but she can communicate from the other place, and anyone with a close connection to the planet can sense or communicate with her. So I expect Zack to talk with her in the next game. I expect Cloud and Red 13 maybe even, and definitely Sephiroth, to all be in on this multiverse communication.
I still subscribe to the theory that Sephiroth is Roland from the Dark Tower, and that he's just relived failures so many times in a row that now he is on the path that he's I have figured out how to get to the top of the tower, how to open the door, and how to save everybody. Or in his mind, I have figured out how to bring multiple timelines together so that I could just destroy everything all at one time, because that's kind of his goal, right? He's trying to force these timelines together. Obviously the black materia is still important to him, obviously, which summons Meteor to destroy the planet. Obviously Aerith and her, oh shit, did I correct myself on Aerith? That's rough. Yeah, rough. I never will. But obviously Aerith is important to him in every timeline. Obviously the black materia is important to him in every timeline. So I think it's very obvious that he's trying to push these timelines together so that they can just all form an amalgamation of everything, and he can just destroy them all at one time, So I think he is I would like to prescribe to the theory that Sephiroth is the good guy, right? He's the guy that's fixing the problem by fucking destroying everything, but he's evil and blah, blah, blah. But I do see those parallels between him and Roland, because he's very obviously figured out that there are timelines. It's okay, so how do I, while Roland would protect them, now how does Sephiroth destroy them all at one time? So instead of ruling over one realm, he can rule over all realms.
There's just one more thing I wanted to say about that Aerith scene, and I don't know how you guys felt, but again, one of the most famous emotional scenes, shocking scenes, sad scenes in video game story history, right? Aerith dying in the original game. I felt like this scene, because we had these multiple like flashes between times and stuff, I thought it had almost zero emotional weight to it. Like, you don't know what happened, so you can't feel anything about what happened there. And what I was looking forward to was the things that I feel like this remake series does best, which is using these, these voice actors and this music and these visual recreations of these famous moments. They carry a lot more emotional weight for me personally, again, as someone who doesn't love the original game. And I felt like this scene where, Sephiroth comes down, just like in the original game, I thought it had almost nothing to it emotionally. It was just like, what's happening this whole time? And it wasn't until the very end, like they don't even show them putting her down in the water in the pool like they do in the original game. The game cuts to after that's happened and everyone's just kind of sitting there and they're grieving and Cloud is talking with Aerith during that.
Makes you think, Dave. Makes you think.
Yeah, it makes you think, but like if you're thinking about what's happening, then you can't feel.
Oh, sure.
I really think there's like no emotion to this scene, and I think that's bad. Like the speculation about what's going to happen in the story going forward is interesting, but that scene particularly should have had emotion to it, and I don't think it did.
Yeah, the intrigue of what may come ruined the big moment. I understand.
Actually, I'm going to surprise y'all with this take. I disagree.
Let's go.
That again, I think that you're right, but the thing that I think they did was the fact that they tugged on the fact that, especially Dyer, that that she dies in the original, and they tug and tug. It's like, well, baby. And I think whatever they're doing with Zack and everything, I think the main focus in that universe is going to be Zack, as it already has been, and Aerith is very much kind of like a backdrop in that universe, and I think eventually it'll just like it is when she is now, where it feels to everybody it'll feel more like a distant friend or a memory, opposed to like a essential part of that universe. That aspect of Aerith is always going to be gone, and I think they've kind of done a good job of making sure that you feel that way, even though in that moment it may have felt like kind of like a cucking. In my opinion, it was like, I know she's going to be dead, I know she's gone, goddammit, but they just made what you think for just a second. And I still felt that impacted the fact that she was gone. I was like, fuck you, bitch ass nigga. You made me think for just a second she wasn't going to be there. And I know she was going to be dead. And so, again, I still feel like no matter what they do, they'll always feel like that emotion that they've conveyed, even if they didn't, because they want to put it on this more of a multiversal scale. And I think they would have just killed her off if they wanted to keep it like original, completely original. But now they've made it to where they're bringing in all these universes. They've tried to compensate for that. And I think they've done a good job of making it feel like, a distant friend, someone that you've lost, you miss, you can feel upset because they're in your memory, but not necessarily because they're there. And, I think the only person that I really feel like more of that, like there, will be Zack. But, we'll see how that happens. But that's just kind of how it came off to me. I was still fucked up. Again, the first time seeing an original will never be able to recreate that moment for me. So I definitely wasn't impacted the way that was, but I still thought the way they did it, considering that they knew most people coming in were going to know it was coming. I think they were I like the way they did it.
I'm holding on. So here's my issue is like, okay, so if keeping her alive, or at least keeping the memory of her alive to Cloud, is as impactful on this game's story as her death was in the original story, then I'm on board for what they are about to do. But I think that's speculative. I think it's unsafe to think that way, and I don't think they can make that work. Like, I agree with Dave. I would just rather have had her die. I think her maybe being alive works in the multiverse theory. It works in the what's going on with Cloud stuff or whatever. But if her still being communicable, if her still being alive or in different timelines, if it doesn't have like an equal impact as her death did in the OG game, I'll be disappointed.
I think they're going to try to make that impact through Zach by making him more essential in the story, and then him having his moment with her is my guess, just because they had that relationship. But I feel you. If they don't tie that off, I think that you're right. It's still going to have less impact than just fucking killing baby girl like they did originally.
Potentially could make the last game shitty, you know?
Yeah. So it's just a really dangerous game that they're playing with multiverse stories, because I don't know, like, I think it takes very careful and special storytelling to make this kind of like wide, infinite possibility multiverse story work. And I'm not saying that they can't do it, and I definitely hope that they do. I hope that when we, the three of us, do the Final Fantasy VII Reloaded Tokyo Drift podcast in 2029, I hope that we're on here talking about like, holy shit, they pulled it off. This is awesome. I love what they did. I really hope that's the case, but like, it's just a dangerous game to play.
It's a coin flip.
Yeah.
And I'll say this. I want to just give respect to my boy, because I'll be honest with you. I thought this is a long shot from the very beginning. For the very first game, I thought it was going to be a long shot. So what he's pulled off so far, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. But I absolutely agree that it is. You could have just stuck to just original things. You kept it simple, considering it was already well done and polished, and in an incredible moment. But yeah, instead you decide to coin flip it. So we'll see. I agree. That's fair.
So on to something that we hinted at, we've kind of brought up a couple of times, but I wanted to like talk about Cloud's identity and where this is going, or where we think this is going. And I talked about it in the non-spoiler part, but I do think this is one of the best parts of the storytelling in this game, like taking full advantage of the fact that they have much more time, much more dialogue, much more visual fidelity to really sow those seeds to let you know early on, before Cloud starts like really acting out, to sow those seeds early on that he's not who he thinks he is, and there's something deeper going on. And then later on, we have like the whole Sephiroth actually like physically like mind controlling him. But even before that, they started to sow those seeds of Cloud's constructed identity from the original game, which I think is like a very cool storyline to have going on at the same time as this whole thing with Sephiroth. So one cool thing that I noted, and this is credit to Adam, aka Desba from the Discord server, who pointed this out, in the Nibelheim flashback, where it shows Cloud and Sephiroth and a couple of Shinra soldiers. We know from the original game that was Zack and Sephiroth, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that was Zack and Sephiroth, not Cloud. Cloud was one of the soldiers there, not capital letters soldiers, like infantry soldiers.
Yeah, he was one of the little basic dudes.
Yeah. And you can see that in this scene because one of those soldiers has Cloud's hair under his helmet, and it would take a very keen eye like Desba to find it. I didn't see it, but then I replayed the scene and saw it. And I was like, holy shit, it's there. You can see Cloud. It's clearly Cloud. That's that soldier. And there are a couple of times in that scene when Cloud is talking and the subtitles don't say Cloud. They say security officer as like the name in the subtitle. So even from that very first scene, they started to sow those seeds of this storyline. And it gets fucking nuts later, but like, I thought this was like awesome how they're setting this up.
Don't they do that in the first game?
They
like,
do
right?
that a little.
Don't you know that's Cloud already?
Yes,
like
they try to sow seeds of that the whole time in that first one as well. And there's something they do in the second one though, in this remake though, that didn't do in the first one, is when Nibelheim is burning. you see a scene where they show like someone crawling on the ground, and it goes like from just a security officer randomly crawling towards Cloud's fucking house to suddenly it's like Cloud, and then it's like suddenly for some reason like why is Cloud in that perspective? Why are they switching? Yeah. And so I thought that was very cool. Again, something that didn't show in the first one, but they were always trying to sow that seed, and that was something that I think it also could have been missed as well.
Yeah, and they had a bunch of conversations also with Tifa where like Tifa knows that Cloud is full of shit basically because he doesn't remember things that he should remember. Like he doesn't remember things about his hometown or who was there in like certain memories that they have and stuff like that. And Tifa's always like bringing these things up. One of the things that I thought was really frustrating about this storyline, like as good as it is that I think that they're, you know, doing all of this foreshadowing and like really hitting on this developing storyline. One of the things that frustrated me is that Tifa doesn't tell anybody that other than like maybe a one or two maybe conversations with Aerith. Like she kind of says like, hey, something's going on with Cloud or something like that. Tifa doesn't say like, hey, it's weird. This guy doesn't remember our childhood memories or something like that. And then they have that scene later where Cloud gets like mind controlled and almost kills Tifa.
Bro.
Crazy fucking scene.
The fact that she survived is a miracle. For all intents and purposes, Cloud killed that girl.
Straight up.
Pushed her into the fucking Mako, and that fucking fish ate her, dude.
Yeah, the weapon.
The weapon ate her, dude, and she was fucking dead. And still, even after that, Tifa had
Did Sephiroth save her there? That's what I wanted to ask. That I thought that was a weird session. I know they
so.
I know they showed it being like a negative thing, but you just said she got eaten, and it showed this whole thing, and it showed Sephiroth cutting that thing open.
Yeah.
Right? Which intends would show that to save her. I'm just saying, I don't know what the fuck is going on, but when you did say that you could see Sephiroth as being like a fucking Loki end up being like the fucking hero, that I'm telling you, dude, I think this third game is going to be the greatest game ever made. But again, just a guess.
I think it has the potential.
I do think that's interesting that you mentioned that, because still, if you realistically think about it, he does cut the weapon open and then just like kind of vanishes, and then she just kind of sits there and nothing
she's alive. Yeah.
Right, and then nothing else happens, but she does survive after that though, which I think is weird, nigga.
It is kind of weird, and like where I was going with that is after this happens, none of the party, I get that they're like cool with him, like he's their dude, everyone wants to support each other and stuff, but like you don't think someone should be like, hey man, you almost killed Tifa, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like
that's Barrett's
nobody
job.
Confronts him about that. Yeah, that's Barrett's. Barrett doesn't do anything,
and Barrett is scared of him. He's scared of him, and so I think everybody is scared of him.
If that's the angle, that everyone's too scared of him to confront it, but like they don't talk about it amongst themselves that we can see. So like
exactly.
We start to get into, this is a thing that I don't love in quite frankly a lot of stories, where there are things that characters should be talking about with each other and they don't. And so like the reason that storylines are allowed to continue is because people don't say shit to anybody. And that's what's going on in this storyline too. And it starts with Tifa just keeping Cloud's secret for too long, I think. And then after this, we should have like a reckoning, like Cloud should be dealing with this and how he hurt other people, and just no one calls him on it. And I thought it was real weird.
It's super weird.
My thing is I think again speaks to two things: is who's stronger than, like, Cloud is the strongest person besides Sephiroth in this universe. Like, and they all know that Cloud could body all of them at once. Like genuinely though. I mean, genuinely. Like the fact that they're like, fuck, Cloud is literally our only shot at defeating Sephiroth is Cloud or Aerith. Like they were hoping Aerith was, but now Aerith is dead. But they were, I mean, even though they knew they were going to need Cloud, at least they were still going to need that nigga. Even with Aerith there, but now they know with Aerith dead, they absolutely need him. So, I mean, I think that really speaks to volumes about how genuinely just strong Cloud is. He's unbelievably fucking powerful. He's and he's trying to go at Sephiroth by himself. And obviously Sephiroth, that goes to show how strong Sephiroth is like Cloud has absolutely no shot. But still, compared to everybody else, Cloud could put everybody that on his squad in the grave by himself, like 1v6, and they all know that, and they all love him, which is, I think, is like a cool dynamic they're trying to show. Like, they're scared of him because how strong he is, but they're also scared for him. You know what I'm saying? I think they're showing that dynamic really well within that, because, like, obviously Barrett, even though they know that he would die, I still think they would all squad up and fight him, even though they know they would die. That's why they're doing the whole fight in the first place. They're willing to die for it. They just don't want to ever fucking have to do that. But I do think that anybody else, they would have already been fucking like, all right, well, we're going to die, but we're going to squad up, go out fighting though. But it's Cloud.
All right, Biggs, you asshole.
You know what I'm saying? Biggs, you're about to catch all 10 of these balls, nigga. You hear me? So, again, I think that's a cool, subtle way that they're going about that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Ryan. Like, maybe it is as simple as they didn't call him out on it publicly because he almost just killed one of them, and nobody wants that to happen again. So, yeah, that does make sense to me.
And nobody really wants to admit the fact that like he's going through that. I think if you say it out loud, then suddenly like, yeah, fuck, Cloud's fucking fucked up, right? Yeah, we have to admit this, though. Like, what are we going to actually do about it? And then you have to actually conversation. How the only way to deal with it is killing him. There is no other way to deal with it because he's the strongest character besides Sephiroth. The only way to deal with him is to kill him, because reasoning clearly isn't going to work. So, like, if they have the conversation, then that means they have to have that conversation.
Yeah.
And what if they know he's being controlled by Sephiroth? What if they, there are conversations that we don't see? True. Like, what if they don't want to be honest with him because they don't want to give Sephiroth any extra juice? I mean, that's I know fair. It's like a wild theory, but like,
no, that's true.
Possibility.
Well, because you do see that, at least you see the robed men, at least as a way of just to be able to say, like, okay, you're seeing his degradation, you're seeing what's happening. So it's not like you're just like, this is just happening out of nowhere and there's no examples of why it's happening to Cloud. They can see physically, like, okay, shit, this is what the fuck's happened to my boy. We just got to try to find, if we could just sustain and have him hang on long enough for us to figure this shit out. Maybe it's just, if we kill Sephiroth, goddamn it, he'll be fine. But I mean, obviously they don't know. They're just fucking hoping. Yeah,
I think part of maybe like the solution to what I talked about like being unsatisfying about this, part of the answer to that could just be, hey, maybe people are scared of him. Maybe they know that Sephiroth is controlling him, but they know they can't do anything about it. So, like, they don't want to push him into doing something else, like what he did to Tifa. And so it's just, like you said, like, okay, well, we just press on, and by defeating Sephiroth, hopefully that makes this stop. I just wish someone would have said something at any point through the game. To just be like, hey, man, what the fuck?
No, I agree. It seems like they were like Tifa. I do think you're right, though. Like you guys were saying, it does seem like Tifa and Aerith were having some back in conversations. Yeah, and obviously everybody else is dudes. So I feel like they're kind of shining on that. The fact that women are kind of like more of like, okay, let's talk about this. We're best friends, blah, blah, blah. And they were clearly showing they were having private conversations. And at one point, remember, Tifa said, hey, let me tell Aerith this whole thing, by the way.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because showing further, though, that's like, we clearly know you're fucking tripping, brother. We can't, I just can't let you do anything that would set you off. We just got to have you hold on. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Hang in there and keep you away from anything that could set you the fuck off. Because I think they kind of know what the fuck's going on with them, but obviously they don't know what the fuck this nigga, will it matter no matter what they do?
Yeah. So later on, Cloud starts to like have those realizations that something's other than Sephiroth controlling what he's doing. He's having those realizations that, like, at the very least, his memories aren't what they think they are. I think there's a point where he says that he feels like there are different people inside of his mind, which, to me means that his false identity is cracking a little bit. And then later on, when they're in the mansion, the Shinra mansion, Cloud remembers who Zack is and the reality of that mission. So I think that might have been what allowed Sephiroth to like find a way in, maybe. Like, this facade is breaking, and that lets Sephiroth in to Cloud's brain to like mind control him or something like. Because in my memory, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't remember Sephiroth mind controlling Cloud in the original game, right? Did that happen?
He definitely did. In the original game, he basically, after he got the black materia.
Okay, after he got the black materia. But this was before.
He literally controls him and forces him to like put that black materia inside that huge black orb, and then that's when the whole 7 things happened. Okay. But that was kind of the only moment. It was pretty small.
Right, and the mind control stuff happens before the black materia is even really introduced into this.
Yeah.
But then, like you guys said, at the very end, Cloud slots the black materia into his sword, so who fucking knows what's going to happen in the rest of the story here.
So I do have a curious, so has Sephiroth summoned Meteor yet, yes or no?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
Okay, so right now Cloud is still essentially on a mission to bring it to him.
Yes. Yeah, okay. 100%.
So essentially, every soldier that has ever been created has at least one cell of Genova in them, and Sephiroth is resummoning every cell Genova that is not in her to her again, so she's back to full power, and then she could do all her crazy shit, essentially.
So that's what those robed guys are doing, right? They're on the path to that. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And who is better safety to transport the black materia than the second strongest person that you have mind control over?
Yeah, exactly. 100%. Yep.
This is the only other thing I wanted to talk about was I feel like they went way more in depth on Genova and Genova coming to the planet and Genova's fight with the ancients than they did in the original game. Going through some of the temples and stuff, seeing the I don't know what you would call them, the little fight scenes from the past or whatever. But Genova to me is one of the craziest stories in this entire game. And you can go and read all about it. But essentially she's just like this alien that landed on this planet and just started destroying it. And I never felt like they gave her the proper like she's an important character in the original game. But I think they went way more in depth on like who she is and what she did and what, Shinra and the ancients and the Cetra and how they were all kind of involved with Genova and how this whole thing kind of started. I think that's one of the unsung cool things about this game is how in depth they go into that specific storyline. So I love Genova and the concept and the role she plays within this universe. So it was really cool seeing a lot of stuff devoted to her in this game that I don't really feel like they spent the proper amount of time of in the original.
I agree. Yeah, I think the stuff with Genova in the original game took a lot of connecting the dots, we'll say. There's just less screen time available in the original game compared to this. And so it was another point of emphasis when they're taking that story, and especially they're taking a section of the original game and blowing it up into a game that's longer than the original game. So I'm glad that they do give the shine to stuff like Genova and Sephiroth's past that the original game did do, but not a ton of.
Yeah, it's what sets up the path to where we are today. This is the starting point is Genova landing planet, and I'm glad they got to get into that a little more.
Yeah, we got that scene of Sephiroth just in the library, just hitting the books real hard for a while.
Oh yeah, he can read.
When that first Harry Potter fever was hit, everybody on the books, baby.
Yeah, that's what he was reading in there.
For a fact.
The Half-Blood Prince.
Yeah, that's
him. He's the Half-Blood Prince. We figured it out, boys.
So we talked about the ending with Aerith. We've given our predictions for where the storyline's going. We talked a little bit about Cloud and his identity and his struggle throughout the game, his many struggles, we'll say. Let's just kind of clean up, talk about some miscellaneous other spoiler things that happen throughout the game. There's a lot of cool places that you go. There's a lot of cool scenes that happen. Who wants to take one? Tell me something cool. Spoilers are, full game as always. What was something super memorable from the rest of the story?
The surprise, I was just going to say the surprise thing that caught me off guard was just the gi, and how they've been shown into. I think they're going to have a surprising role. They've already created the black materia, which I do not remember them doing in the original, and their impact and how they have essentially affected, and them showing just how important, well, realistically, fucking Red 13 and his people are at protecting the universe, and the planet. If it wasn't for them, we would already been fucked by the gi. So I'm curious as far as that was kind of my take. That was the one thing that I thought would stick. I'm curious to see how that'll turn out in the third one, because they played a pretty essential part in this game. And, I'm curious to see how that's going to turn out in the third. Are they going to fizzle out, or are they going to continue to play another incredible in the third one? Because it seems like we've already said if Nanaki doesn't, or Red 13 doesn't make sure that he keeps that promise, they're still going to fuck the planet in some way or another. So in the end, it seems like the gear kind of like the main source of this issue, low key, because if without them, the black materia wouldn't even exist. So I don't know.
Yeah. I think that scene was interesting because it accomplishes the same thing as like the original game. Just like Sephiroth, I think, tells you to get the black materia, and that's it. Like the gear not there, really, right?
Yeah.
So in this game, they just take an opportunity to add something new to fill out the lore of the region and of the world to accomplish the same goal as what happened in the original game. So, for all the stuff that's added in, I do like little stuff like this. And this section was not that long. It gives a little bit into the backstory of, like you said, like Red 13's people and like what they do, what their purpose here is and what their history is. So that was pretty cool.
Agreed.
One section that I thought was really cool is the gold saucer, of course, but specifically my favorite part. So there's 2 dates that you can go on. The first one is cut short because Barrett's old friend Dine goes fucking nuts shooting up the place. I'll talk about that in a second, but the second date that you go on at the gold saucer is it's decided by like a culmination of a bunch of choices and stuff you've done. And I think it's like whoever's friendship meter is the highest or something like that. So real quick, who was your date at the gold saucer?
Oh my God, dude. I had my date was Barrett.
Fuck yeah.
Dude, it was because I literally followed like a step-by-step guide to make sure I got Aerith as my date, because I'm like, oh, she's definitely dying. So I want to see that scene. And then I just knock at the door, just sprayed the breath mint in my mouth like, hello, Aerith. Oh, what's up, Barrett? Oh, it's good, homie. Are
Barrett's
you
just there in like a mesh tank top. He's like, let's go.
Did you walk Aerith here?
He'd rock that as hard as a sailor suit, baby.
Did you walk Aerith here for her own safety, and she's standing behind you? You didn't. Oh, you want to hang out? But it was the best scene. Barrett is my boy, and I think I said this in the remake. If there is one character that they have made infinitely better in this game series, it's Barrett, and I love him. And I retrospectively, I think it's very cool that I got the Barrett date. All right, I'll shut up.
Yeah. Ryan, who'd you get as the date?
Papa got Tifa. So
yeah, me too.
You did? I went back. I felt ashamed not getting Aerith. I was like, God damn, did I fuck this up? And then I saw how everything panned out. I was like very, very happy because she has huge titties. I love Tifa. Mm-hmm. And essentially she is just my dream chick, just a bitch who's hella chill, super sweet, makes a dope drink. But as soon as shit jump off, though, she is ready to
through a wall.
Nigga, she the first one. Exactly. She doing some crazy fucking Chun-Li shit to niggas. So, and I love Aerith, by the way. Again, don't get it twisted. But yeah, I thought that the whole thing with Tifa was very cool. That's what I had.
Yeah, I had Tifa as well. The first date was with Tifa, and the second one too. And the second one was the one I wanted to just like give a little bit of shine to, because you go see a theater production. I forget what the play is called, like Heartless or something like that. That might be my favorite scene in both of these games, that production of the play. And it is mostly because the voice actor for Barrett is just giving like 300%, just cheesing the fuck out.
Ham sandwich.
Dude, yeah. It's so, and Cloud is acting too, and Cloud is predictably like the worst actor. He's so bad.
Everybody's so into him.
Yeah, exactly. Like you go through this play and it's like, it's so funny and everyone's so charismatic, and like Barrett plays the villain, or at least he did in my play. I assume it's the same for everybody. And like you do those QTE sections when they're acting it out, and it's so wonderful and funny. And then at the end, Aerith sings a song, and like the song is so beautiful. It made me cry during it. And like her song is woven into the song she's singing, and it's like so wonderful. This is like, I mean, there's a lot of cool shit in this game. This is my favorite part of the game, was this stage play.
Dave, dude, that song Aerith sang was so trash, bro. I was like,
what?
Like, literally, like the whole time I was just like, yeah. I was like, this is what I get for playing a JRPG.
Very easy to say.
This is exactly what I get.
You had Barrett as your date, did he? So was he a villain?
Yeah, he was the villain.
Even with him as your date?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, so
okay, cool.
And this is the point I wanted to make, I was like, how are they going to do the play? Like at the Gold Saucer, because there's clearly a theater section set up. So how's this going to work? And it was perfect. I loved every moment of that, aside from the end where Aerith sang that really weird song that didn't connect to me emotionally.
Right. Look, the song's not great, but the moment is great. And look, I love Final Fantasy. I love Final Fantasy X too, so you can't hurt me with these performances.
Right. He said it was beautiful. He cried, nigga. He said it was perfect.
I'm not.
It's like Celine Dion,
that's not what I'm attacking. Is it weird that Aerith is the best character in the game, and also she could be a famous opera singer?
Not at all.
No, not at all.
Cool.
Because the fact that she gonna be dead so soon, so she's got to have all those potential.
I know that's
she gets those moments.
Is you're like shit.
It makes it way more sense. Yo, no, I will say that final goodbye, David. Tell me real quick that last goodbye from Aerith though, where she's just like, it was so settled. It wasn't like overly emotional, but as everybody flew off, Cloud clearly crazy because he put black materia to sword, all crazy as shit, talking to Aerith.
Yeah.
And then she's just like, everybody flies off. She sits there, and as they reach that horizon where you can't see it anymore, she's just like, goodbye. Like, it's just like, God, that one hit me low key. That was one of the more emotional moments for me for the game. Just because again, that's my point. Is just it felt very definitive that she's dead for me. Like opposed to like where I know you felt like it was kind of like an in between, and I felt like in that universe they're going to make it absolutely certain that you know that baby girl gone.
I guess I can see what you mean, but I had no certainty one way or the other, right? Like in that moment, like my opinion or like my prediction, this is based on sitting and thinking about this ending for like the last 2 months since I finished the game. So in that moment, I was like, I don't know what the fuck is going on right now. Time to watch some YouTube videos or something after this is over. But there are two moments.
Have there been some YouTube videos that have really expanded on anything like a lot?
Oh, dude, yeah, I'm sure. Okay. Yeah, they're immediately. Before I was finished with the game.
2 days after the game was released.
Yeah.
Fair.
There were two moments here that, so like, I give a lot of credit to this remake series for giving these moments more life than they could have had in the original game, right? So like 3D, like incredible graphics and like really good voice acting and incredible music and like, you know, the choreography of fight scenes and stuff like that. There were two parts in this game where I thought the original game did it better than Rebirth. They were the fight against the giant snake. I thought was much better in the original game to just basically like not really see it. You find it dead and you're like, holy shit, Sephiroth is no joke. And you kind of imagine what happened there. And I don't think it's that good in this game. The other one was the scene with Dyne, which that is one of my favorite parts of the original game, is learning Barrett's backstory and, reconnecting with that when you go to that part of the world. And I did not like the voice character direction for Dyne. I found him too cackling evil to care about. he needed to go. I did not feel bad about killing him one bit in this.
Oh,
Whereas
dude,
in the original, it was a great scene, I thought.
He was such an asshole to Barrett. Clearly Barrett cared. It's just like at every fucking stopping point, he's just like, no, fuck you. And Barrett's like, no, your daughter's alive though. I've been keeping her safe for you because I believed you were alive and you're my best friend. He's like, I don't care. And that boss fight was super fucking annoying. What was the first thing you said?
The snake.
Yeah, I completely disagree with the snake thing, dude. That snake fight was fucking epic as shit. And I think a really cool introduction. They did a really good job with the swamp area before you go in. Because, if you played the OG, you know it's under there somewhere. You don't know when. And they really catch you with it really well. I thought that boss fight was awesome. I do think it's, one of those, big moments in the OG game where you're like, oh, I fought this thing and it ripped my shit apart. Oh, Sephiroth impaled it through a fucking sharp tree. Cool. He's the strongest person in the world type shit. But I really enjoyed that snake fight. I thought it was actually a pretty difficult fight. I beat it on my first try, but I have no fucking idea how.
Again, this may surprise y'all, but as far as my take here, I actually agree with David. I think that I think that I was a little, just the way that it just seemed a little over unnecessary where they're showing how strong he is. You know what I'm saying? It's one of those moments. Actually, I think where the reason he hates anime is because it's they're always over explaining things. It's just everyone already knows Sephiroth is a fucking god. And I think that it added so much more to that scariness, to the fear of him, and to that mystery of just Jesus fucking Christ, what could he have done to impale a fucking snake of that size on there? And then you see him do it, and he fucking whirls in the water. He does a tornado thing, and then I was it was cool. Don't get me wrong, I'm just saying it was tight to see the scene. But I think in all out reality, the first time you see that thing impaled on that thing, you're like, Jesus Christ.
He grabbed it by the tooth.
What did he do?
And threw it mouth first on that thing.
I thought he did that shit barehanded, nigga. You know what I'm saying? Where he just really DDP'd his this. He was just I was just so I think the mystery of that part, I agree. That I do think that. I'm just saying, he literally hit it with the people. I'm just saying, it was again, that's one of those moments where I agree. Did they do be over explaining shit in anime? In that situation, it just felt that was a situation you should have just kind of left it to the original resource. Where it's God, he was so scary. That lightning striking nigga. It was just you're coming up on a haunted house. It was God. It was just a really peak moment for me that I'll never forget. And I do feel it was just a little bit different. I don't hate on the moment, but if I had to choose, I would definitely go with the original.
I think what they did earlier in the Nibelheim flashback when Sephiroth fights in your party and he's way fucking stronger than you, that does that job of showing you how strong Sephiroth is. Whereas in the main game or the original game, I think that part where you find the dead snake, that's the moment where you actually see how strong Sephiroth is. In this game, you've already seen it. So maybe that's why, but it's still whatever I had in my imagination was way cooler than what they could have possibly shown me on the screen. So
I agree.
I think that's why it works better in the original there.
I completely agree. And what was the second one thing you said?
Dine.
Yes. I also agree with that. I think that the whole Dine thing was absolute garbage. And I hate to say it because I love Barrett so much, but it was nigga, you were in an open fucking, you were in a, really, I understand what he was saying. Again, this is, I coming from being a father. If I ever lost Peanut, I would literally just I would literally stop caring about literally everything. I don't give a fuck what anybody was doing. But to find out she still existed, I don't know if you're just at a place where you just don't care if you get that deep. I could see his point, but it was just so shit compared to how they did the first time. You know what I'm saying? In the first one, he seemed humanized and he seemed like he was just going through it, like just a man who was completely, utterly broken. And the second one just seemed like a bitch ass nigga. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. It just, the way that they presented it was so garbage. And the first one, literally, it felt I don't know. It just felt like a moment of theater where it was this is a perfectly fucking shot moment where you could literally see an absolutely destroyed man who lost absolutely fucking everything. And even after he found out his baby girl was alive, it made sense. He was it's just, I'm gone, baby. I've killed, I've done. It's just not enough. And kills him, so just drops off. That shit was gas. Honestly, it was just one of the best shot moments I thought in quite frankly, in in all three of the disc, in my opinion. I thought it was just a really, really done shot. I mean, a done moment. But yeah, I agree. It was awful in the remake, unfortunately.
I did like the parts before that where you learn about Barrett's backstory in the region. And like, so like when you get to like the Corel town and everyone's like, what the fuck are you doing here, Barrett? Like everyone just treats him like shit. And you're like,
the
whoa.
NPCs, like as you're walking past them, are like, bitch.
Yeah,
pug,
exactly.
Fraga.
almost kills everybody in that town over Barrett, bro. She was ready to kill everybody in that bitch over that fucking over that beer pour. She's like, hold on, don't kill everybody, baby girl. Goddamn, we know you're stronger than everybody here on the team besides Cloud. Slow up.
Yeah, I thought that part was really good though. So like, it's not like that whole part, you know, sucked. But the way that it ended, Dine was just too like maniacal, fucking just cackling in like there's no way that you could feel anything for that like that. You could say that he's a broken man or something like that. I would turn to a
psychopath if I would know. Like as I've already said, I would have no problem. I don't know who I'd become, but I admit becoming like a Joker psychopath type thing if I lost Peanut, or just kill myself. But like I could understand you being like a villain, like he was killing people, like you kind of are a villain, but like him just being like such a like a little crybaby about the situation, opposed to being like someone who was shattered. Like,
or
you know what I'm saying?
get stronger from a situation.
Fair. Yeah.
And I also hated it, back to a pacing issue, how like you got done with this big emotional moment in this game that you're still trying to process as being different than the original game, and then immediately they throw you into like this dumbass Shinra fight. I think it's with like Palmer or some shit or something.
Oh yeah, one of those executives. Yeah,
you're right. That was the Palmer fight.
Yeah, I fucking hate
it's
Palmer.
One of the things where like this game. It's not that they don't let moments breathe, because a lot of time big moments happen and then like nothing big happens right after it. But they just like, I don't think they let them breathe in the right way. So like this thing happens with Dine, and if you like the scene, then it should be a very emotionally affecting scene, and like it fucks Barrett up what's going on with him. And then immediately after that, you have this cartoonish mustache twirling villain in like a assault tank or whatever the fuck. Yeah. You have to fight for like 15 fucking straight minutes. And then you had the scene where Cloud almost kills Tifa, and 5 minutes later you're in the next region trying to catch a chocobo. And it's like, whether you need time to breathe or whether you need momentum going into the next thing, I don't feel like this game chooses the right thing very often. They're just constantly sending you into things that shouldn't be there. It's like, I think that they could have cut that Shinra executive. They could have cut that entire boss sequence. They could have had characters ride, in quiet and deal with what just happened. But this game doesn't really do that. And then after they don't do what the original game did. I was going to say, like, after Aerith dies, you don't go snowboarding, which is why I think maybe the next game will the next game will begin with Cloud dropping in off of a helicopter, just ripping up the side of a mountain.
90s guitar, dude.
Fucking Goldfinger's playing. Yeah.
What's that SSX Tricky song?
That's oh yeah, you do. It's tricky, nigga. But real quick, just David, if they got rid of just the Chocobo sneaking parts, I feel like you would have loved the game just like at least twice as much if you do. I think
it would have been. It would have been like
you dropped in that Chocobo sneaking just a couple times where it wasn't necessarily warranted. Just
it's because like, hey,
that Chocobo sneaking.
I hate it too. I hate it so much.
All right, so
but
two
I'm just
reasons.
Saying, if they got 2 times as much, is all I'm saying.
All right, so it would, like, if I was grading this game on a 10-point scale, if they didn't make you do stealth to catch chocobos, it would have gotten 0.5 points more. I'll say that. Two reasons for that.
That's a lot.
A B.
That's a lot, by the way.
All right. So here's why, right? So all the open world sections, they end with a big story moment. So you do the open world exploration, then you do the story things, these linear story sequences. They always end with something interesting, and then you get put into the next open world section, and the first thing you have to do is do the stealth. And the other part of this is that the stealth is really bad. Like, it's it reminds me of,
as you said, no?
It is correct. It is dog water. It is, it's like one of those things where the game engine is not built for stealth. And so they try to make a stealth section and it just sucks. There was no way it was going to be good.
Do you remember when you had to wait for like the flowers to go down and grow back while you're like leading a chocobo with a fucking like a nut at it? Dude.
Or pushing mine carts to hide behind.
Yes, I do. Unfortunately, it was awful, gang.
Yeah,
and I just, by the way, again, I love the game so much. Okay, I'm just a type of
I'm willing to deal with some of that dumb shit for
3,000 on this game, dick.
Yeah,
but that was an awful part of the game.
Yeah. Not to belabor the whole chocobo thing, it will probably be the last time I bring it up, but was there another notable moment or something that you guys don't want to end this podcast without touching on?
That part in the Temple of the Ancients when all of your characters are forced to play through their own singular scenario of their past. That shit fucking... Dude, okay. So I'm going to talk about one that really fucked me up, and it was Red 13's, how they showed them dragging him through like a fucking medical room, strapping him down to a bed.
Hojo's doing his thing.
Oh my god, dude, that sucked. All right, I'm going to do two more. Barrett. That was so sad seeing his wife die. His wife
was the hottest chick.
Cheeked up on a Tuesday afternoon. Every Tuesday afternoon.
The only time you've ever seen his wife.
I know. I'm right. I know why he's never dated. I know why Tifa doesn't mean shit to him. All right. And then the last one is Aerith. When she is when her mother dies and she's walking through like the metro fucking crying. Like that was the most emotional moment in the fucking game for me, was having to walk as little Aerith crying about her dead mother in the rain in a big city. I was like, they're really not going to do this, are they, for real? And then it shifts perspective and I'm controlling her and I'm like, oh god, no.
Yeah, those trials were really good.
Ruined me. They were very, very.
For me, it was just really just the music again, just the atmosphere of the game. It really is just beautiful, just being in the game. Just no matter where you are, if you take a second to sit, you're most likely just going to be serenaded by something. I just think the game is beautiful. Really, always to it. Yeah, I really can't think of anything else. Although, one more actually, that Queen's Blood nigga is hot. Fuck with that Queen's Blood.
Oh yeah, they tried to introduce like a supernatural, like the game is evil and like people's spirits are being like captured by it and shit.
I stuck the soul out the niggas. No, it didn't matter.
I did not care one bit about that story, but I wanted every Queen's Blood match that I could.
Period.
I could
fight. Got these hands.
Yeah, I thought it was very funny that on the cruise ship, you do that tournament and the final boss was Chadley because everybody hates Chadley. And I think that the designers of this game heard all the feedback about Chadley from Remake and they're like, you motherfuckers have no idea what's coming.
It's very clear that he doesn't give a fuck about what we want, but also cares at the same time. You know what I'm saying? He's not going to be bullied, but he's like,
yeah, exactly.
And also watching Red 13 dance.
Dude!
Goddamn uniform in that fucking goddamn tournament was
doing the scarecrow.
I made that my phone's background. I caught a picture of him doing like his fucking like doing the moonwalk, and I made that my phone background for like 3 months, nigga. Like that shit had me. That shit was so fucking goofy, bro. Like 100% goof troop. Okay, and the last thing I'm gonna say is I just wanted to go on record is the fact that again the game is gas, but Vincent, we saw him in his form, right? And him going into his beast form. I want to go on record saying that I assume we will, as it was fucking awesome seeing him transform and fight. And that I assume that we will not see not one of those dope ass abilities will be available for us to use when we are using him in the third game. I just want to go on record saying it. The fact that it will be a completely different skill set, none of which were as cool as when we fought him in that game. So, that's it for me. I love y'all niggas.
I love you too.
Yeah, I love you guys too. And I wanted to say one more thing before, actually two more things. Number one, the bald guy bar in Junon made me laugh out loud. That was very funny. When you go inside and Rude is in there, he's like one of the high profile members.
Like the dude,
and they
like
get mad at you for not being bald. That was very good.
That's true. I forgot
so
about
good.
that shit.
So
And neither of you guys wanted to talk about the beach scenes at Costa del Sol. Something changed between the last time we recorded and now.
No, we are better men than we were. Do you want us to? You got 6 hours, Dave, because I'll talk about Tifa's bikini if you really want.
I don't want to turn this into smut. I love you dearly.
All right. Well, thank you guys for coming on. We're at almost 3 hours of recording now, but this is a game where we had a lot to say. It's a game that is remaking a game that means a lot to the both of you. And this conversation, especially really enjoyed the spoiler section, just going through all of the theories and stuff for what's going to happen in the next game, because you guys know infinitely more about the story of FF7 than I do. So I really appreciated that. And as we've said 100 times throughout the podcast, really looking forward to that third game to see how this all works out, or doesn't, but hopefully it does. And like I said before, in 2029, When Tales from the Backlog is the biggest podcast on the airwaves, calling it now. You guys will be back for that episode about the third game. So thank you both for taking all this time.
Bro, it's been my fucking pleasure.
Oh,
I
yeah,
love
dude.
you both a lot. We've been boys since day one, and I love being on here.
I appreciate you stepping up, Dave. Always a fan being on. I'll talk to you tomorrow in the Yankee.
Oh, you cut out there. That's just divine intervention right there.
Damn it. That means the Orioles are about to lose 20 in a row. Fuck.
All right. Well, that is all for this episode. And thank everybody who has listened all the way to the end. As always, you are my hero. Check down in the show notes for a link for a top 3 podcast if you're interested in me and Aaron and 2 other guys we pulled off the street, and sometimes Ryan, for a comedy show. I think it's a good time. And as always, tune in next week for the next game to come out of the backlog.
Do you feel like you're the only person in your circle who wants to go deep about video games regularly?
We were like that too. Until now.
Welcome to Crossplay Conversations, the brand new bi-weekly topical video game podcast from Luke Lewis,
Joseph Hooper,
And Jacob McCoy.
with many years of breaking it down separately on shows like the Left Behind Game Club, Player Podcast, and Lukewarm Games, the gang is finally coming together to publish their gaming group chat in audio form every other week.
Expect roundtable reviews of the latest games, profiles of upcoming indies, and insightful conversations about essential topics in the video game industry. All with a mostly positive, insightful, and fun style.
Help us out by subscribing on your podcast platform of choice to get the first episodes delivered straight to your feed.
And follow us on Twitter at Crossplay Convos for updates about the show.
Cheers and happy gaming.
Video games are a unique medium.
They can tell stories,
Immerse us in strange, fantastic worlds.
blur the very boundaries of our reality.
But at the end of the day, video games are fun. Whatever fun is to you.
I'm Jeff Moonen.
And I am Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon.
And on Fun and Games, we talk about the history, trends, and community of video games.
It's a celebration of all the games we play and all the fun we find within them.
And there's so many more games out there. So we hope you'll share in that conversation with us.
Fun and Games podcast with Matt and Jeff. Find us on certainpov.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
And happy gaming.